pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Talk to you. All right. Home Depot, Lowe's, then the gym and the lamp.
We have a list of 15, 20 meeting minutes that are on the table. Do either of you need any more time to review these? Are you comfortable putting on a motion? What is your thoughts?
I haven't looked at them yet. Anything that came in email, were those all in email?
Those were sent just as a block in a folder with all the outstanding ones.
In the email?
In the email.
Yeah, okay, then, okay.
Yeah.
Those I've seen, that's fine.
Okay.
I had a chance to look through them this morning quickly.
Okay.
They everything looked accurate, and as I recollected. Some of them go back quite a ways.
All right then. Do we have a motion to accept the non-executive session meeting minutes? Please review the agenda or the future meeting minutes. We have a lot of them by date, so I do not want to read every one of them, as reading them will not make a big difference to your knowledge of what happened that day. They go from 2017 to 2019 presently, so we're catching up on some missed meeting minutes.
Almost 30 of them.
Yeah. So if you have any questions on which specific meeting minutes are getting approved in the motion, please refer to the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes, non-executive session, as we have them listed on our agenda.
I will second.
Any further discussion? Call for a vote.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. We also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 executive session minutes to be approved and released. Do we have a motion for that?
Good portion of these I'm not involved in, so I'll abstain from these.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion on those?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the executive session minutes commencing on June 26, 2018 through January 22nd, 2019, as listed on the selectmen's warrant.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? General topics regarded police discussions, some stuff with the Marsha Langelier case, as well as some firefighter stuff. Much of it mostly personnel or contract-related discussions. Call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye. We also have an executive session minutes not to be released for October 29th, 2018, exemption 1, and January 22nd, 2019, regarding fire chief. I'd make a motion that we accept these, but not for release until the items are closed.
Okay, I will second that.
Any further discussion? Call for a vote.
Aye.
Any public comments?
The Lions Club is doing the car show.
Yes.
Our annual car show. This time it's going to be for the Amory Cancer Fund.
Okay.
And we'd like to do the same as what we've done in previous years.
Okay.
And Sandy has all the paperwork for it.
Okay. And that's September 7th?
September 7th.
Okay. You guys have any questions on it?
Nope.
Okay. Nice. Because it wasn't on the agenda, I just recommended that they bring it up because they're here. We can have any questions answered if we had them. If not, we'll put it back on the agenda at the next meeting to make the official vote, so that
Sure.
it's just clear to anybody that may have had questions that didn't show up. As usual, review with the police, make sure the street closings and all that work fine. Again, I don't expect them to say we gotta change it, but I leave that to the police chief to identify if anything needs to be changed. Do you have any other questions?
Cool.
So,
We're just gonna put the vote off to the next meeting because it wasn't posted, so no one else had a chance to come in and speak on it if they wanted to, so we just have to put it off.
it should be fine, but if for some reason at the next meeting someone does come in with,
Public
we'll
comment.
make sure we pass those on to you, just so if we need to clear something up, we can. But I expect the next agenda item to just be a vote and a pass and accept it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming again. And
For doing it.
I appreciate these events, so thank you much for organizing them. As well as the charities that you work towards on this.
Yeah,
It's-
this
it's-
time more than ever is needed, so that's why we're doing the Amory Cancer.
Okay.
Everybody's affected by cancer one way or the other.
Yeah. Greatly appreciated. So it's, the $10 entry fee is
For the car.
for the
Yeah,
car.
cars. For the public is free.
Okay.
Do you wanna read the brochures for people so they know
Yeah.
exactly what it is?
I'll just benefit the Anne Marie Cancer Fund, where at the Barry Mass Common, September 7th, starting at 9 in the morning. Breakfast at 8 a.m. at the Congregational Church, Barry Common. Rain or shine, no rain date. Refreshments, food and beverages will be available. Raffles, 50-50 raffle, $10 entry fee per car. Trophies for the top 10 will be awarded at 2 p.m. And some contact numbers were provided for Sal, Chris, and Stanley, who are spearheading the coordination apparently.
Correct.
So
Do we have one of these posted on the town board any place in the building, or can we do that?
We can do that.
Why don't we post one here?
please.
Thank you very much. We'll get you more, so.
Thank you. All right, enjoy. Oh, thank you.
We'll keep posting them.
See, we don't sell the food. We have everybody in town gets involved. Barry Pizza does something special, Becky's Bistro, and it gives back to the community.
Nice.
You know, instead of us bringing, the Lions Club Trail or this or that, it's more
a
important.
community.
It's a community.
Give everybody else the opportunity to participate, benefit. I appreciate that approach.
Been saying for 2 years, that's what I'd like to see, more events in the common, more participation from people, more people involved in our town. So I like
That's the most important thing.
I like stuff like this. I like the events going down at Felton Field with having 4-H come in and things, and I think it's good steps for us.
No, we look forward to it.
Thank you.
So if you stop, we're all gonna be upset. But understood. So thanks a lot, Sal.
Thank you.
With that, anybody else with public comment? Okay, we'll move on to the agenda items then. Old business, discussion on solar developments for the town. I know Andrew's been kind of doing a lot of the legwork behind the scenes for us, so I'll give you.
Yeah, just continuing working to see what the viability is for bringing, or doing some sort of town solar development, whether or not that's, us developing it or leasing property. I know originally we were looking at Town Farm Road, but it seems that there might be some environmental concerns at that location that might be prohibitive as far as moving forward. So currently in the process of evaluating what tax title properties we have coming on the rolls and see if there's any of those that are viable. The biggest downside that I'm following is that most of them fall on, any land that seems to be viable is falling on roads that are designated as scenic roads. So that could be an inhibitor as well. So, it's not a lot to choose from, but just doing the due diligence to see what's out there as far as land that could be leased for solar development.
I'm just curious for those sites on the scenic road, maybe we should reach out to the planning board and see if
Yeah.
there's certain criteria they might consider if it creates the proper visual barrier or something like that.
Yeah.
What that type of visual barrier could be. It could be an earth berm with vegetation on it, so it's literally you have to climb the berm in order to see the solar behind it. But I would leave that up to a little of their input, so we would know if it's something we want to throw into an RFP.
Yeah, the tax title property that I was able to identify that could be a possibility did have a significant vegetative buffer from anything around it, and was set back substantially from the road, so it could still be viable. I'd like to sit down with the planning board though and see what their thoughts are on it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that or comments at this time?
No, I'm anxious to look into it, and I had a talk with Mr. Lipson about solar in general, and he's indicated that he thinks there's potential for a good deal of money, revenue from rental of properties. Not like we saw with the money at the landfill, the transfer station, not the DPW and
the tipping fees thing?
No,
Oh,
we looked in the solar for the DPW land and
when they talked about
water
adding
department.
that ground array thing, that.
Right, and it was gonna
Yeah.
benefit us something like $1,000 in savings a month, which is really trivial.
Yeah.
This sounds like it could be tens of thousands of dollars a month to lease some land, so I'm very interested to see sooner than later where it goes.
Okay.
So if we can, identify something, keep this on the agenda, and keep on top of this, it'd be nice to be able to identify something before this opportunity dries up.
Sounds good.
And it will dry up.
And we might want to look at whether the RFP could include multiple parcels as options.
Right.
Because it may help us better with
Mhm.
bidders, et cetera.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
I'd been passing out some articles on solar to you a couple of meetings ago and to Andrew, et cetera. And I think I was reading one of them or two of them. There are some organizations that focus on land such as Town Farm Road, where you just mentioned that maybe have some environmental concerns. And I would hate to have I would hate the town to miss the opportunity by not researching, or maybe having an expert come in, a paid expert, come in and make some sort of evaluation, because the solar rules and income are decreasing gradually, and they have for several years. And there may be a time. Remember, in the 2012, we received a letter from, I forget his name, but he lives there, Town Farm Road, and he talked about solar, and that was a wonderful opportunity to think about it then. So we've been thinking about it for 6 years, and I would hate to be involved and in a town where everybody says, well, I'm sorry, we didn't act fast enough. So everybody is saying that there's going to be an end to solar at some time. I think we need to work, instead of just occasionally, I think we need, the board needs to focus on, with the town administrator, and try to make this thing happen as quickly as possible, because we've been talking about it for many months at the meeting, because I've brought it up like I'm doing now for many months, and we never seem to get past a certain point. We're always talking to more committees and thinking about it and doing this. Several weeks ago, I asked, and I was refused by you, Charlie, is that I asked to have some sort of a committee to focus on this, or bring in an expert, or do something, because we, by talking and pontificating like you guys are doing and the town is doing, we may lose a very important asset, and that is the ability to use the sun. And when that's gone, we don't have any other possibility of any income coming in other than raising taxes. And taxes are not something that are generally raised. Is that sometimes they go down and sometimes they go up. If anybody here has the impression that taxes generally go up, I think you're sitting in the wrong seat. And because I think we need select people who think or believe that taxes can come down as well. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any further discussion on solar? Okay. Move on to the next, update on police department operations. Chief Carbone, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you? All right. So this is, it's a lot of information, so I'll try to go through it quick. Stop me if you have any questions. The first news is the bad news, and that is that we are at 100% expenditure of our overtime budget. The good news is, we realized, and I told you back in August, we'd expended 50%, and then we changed some things that we were doing. We had broken out the overtime budget in the way that it used to be. It used to be one big lump of cash that we had salaries, overtime, and all lumped in. We broke it apart this year so that we could watch the different expenditures, and so we caught that sooner than we would have caught it if it had just been in the big pot. So we still have other overtime money amounting to about $30,000 between our part-time and the contractual obligations for things like holiday pay that we have to pay them for overtime. So we're not out of money. We also have, but what's contributing to this is we are down 4 officers, right? We had 3 officers leave, and then we decided at that time we were going to replace 3 full-time officers leave. We know all the stories. And then we decided we would replace 2 and save 1 for July 1st so that we would save that salary money towards the overtime, which is still the plan. We hired an officer who's put himself into the academy so we don't have to pay the academy expense, and he bought most of his uniform because he was part-time. We hired him in the academy, so we're paying him now, but we're not running him on shifts, but that was a big savings, and the idea there was he was going to get hired by somebody else, and it's a huge savings for us. Then we hired an officer who's part-time in another town to be full-time, and he went right into our schedule, and he was going to only need very little training. The downside is he was working for a week and he fell on the ice and he hurt himself, and now he's out, and we're waiting to find out if he's going to be out for 4 months or another 4 days. But he hasn't had his follow-up doctor's appointment, so we're waiting to see. Worst case scenario, he's out for 4 months, or that hurts us because we have another officer going to the academy in March, which would mean we're 5 below numbers. So how are we dealing with that? We have some of the money, for the part-time money is so far really helping us. We have 2 new part-time officers. They are currently training, but they can fulfill part of our shift obligation. Even though they're training, they're there, right? So we have that. We have switched our scheduling, where as soon as the officer goes into the academy, we have 2 in the academy, we will have, we'll go to the 5-2 option for the remaining full-time officers, which will allow us to control certain aspects of the overtime budget. And then the idea is we'd like to think at least one of our part-timers is going to be trained enough to work on their own. So we're working on that. So that will stay in effect. If our injured officer doesn't come back, they'll stay in effect until he comes back. Then the good news is the guys that are in the academy are under those 3-year contracts. So we're not worried about them coming out and leaving. And their 3-year obligation doesn't even kick in until after they come off of their field training. So they come out of the academy, finish their field training, and then starts day 1 of the 3-year obligation. And we have almost half of our department now under those contracts. So the idea is we're planning for the future, and as of July 15th or so, we'll have all of our guys out of the academy, and that will be behind us. So this is where we are right now. And again, we have the 2 new part-timers, and we could stand to hire another 2 part-timers, and we have applications that come in every week. So we don't know if we're going to pick up another one, and that'll help us even more. So that's where we're at money-wise. But given that we have all of this overtime because of the guys that are out or in the academy, we expect, we're probably going to end up over budget. We don't know how much saving that 1 salary is going to help us, but I can't imagine we're not going to be at least somewhat over it. I don't see there's anything any way around it. We're trying to keep it as small a number as possible, and I think as we sit down and talk about this pretty regularly, we're doing a pretty good job. Let's see. So now we'll move on to equipment. So the
Just regarding that, within your existing budget, whether it's different line items moving
Right.
back and forth, how far do you think you're gonna go before you may have to come before the board to see if there's something outside your own department that you're gonna need money from?
another 2 months, we should know. We've spent $50,000 in overtime this year. We have about 32,000 left in those other accounts to put towards it, plus the money we're saving off of the salary that we're not paying. We don't know how close that's gonna get us, but,
Okay.
and really a lot of it depends on whether the officer.
Mid-April right now, we're hoping.
Yes, so we're thinking if the officer that's injured is only lightly injured, well, then we're gonna have a much better forecast, so.
Thank you.
Well, so now equipment, the town approved the warrant for the tasers. So we made our first payment on the tasers. The first payment was $5,000, it's $5,000 a year for 5 years. And I'm actually carrying one of the new tasers, so they've come in. And we've had, the deputy chief is trained as an instructor, and they gave us we hosted the class, therefore his training was free. So that was a fantastic deal. We have the tasers in. There's a couple of parts that are still coming, some carrying cases, and so he's training each officer as they come on duty, so we have to pay them overtime to train for the familiarization course for the tasers, like I was trained today, and Staff Sergeant Brown. So they're out there, it couldn't have been a better time, because the tasers we had another one break. So what we have left over is, cobbled together, so this is very welcome. So they're in. Our new cruiser is the Silverado, which took forever to get because of all the issues that Chevrolet is having with building and moving their plants back in, from Mexico. That was a real slowdown, and everybody was put, we had a real delay. It came in, and it's now up at Duggan, vehicle being outfitted, and he tells us that we should see it on the road in 3 weeks. So,
Okay, good.
we're good there. And, having seen the vehicle, I think that it's going to be the perfect fit. I think getting a pickup truck is going to be the perfect fit for what we need, especially in the winter. Bulletproof vests. So this is interesting. It's going to sound like bad news, but it's good news. Bulletproof vests are good for 5 years. So each new officer gets a new vest. The vests have to be according to the federal mandate, when you get federal grant money, it has to be one vest, one guy, and it has to be tailor fit. Okay. So guy comes in, part-time or full-time, we get him a vest. We send that money in, we send the receipt into the federal government, and as long as it meets the specifications, which of course they do, they give us half the money back. It takes about 4 months, the money comes back, and it goes back into our account via finance. So there's also a Massachusetts matching grant. So I found out about that, and we get to go back to as far as March of 2017 and ask for all the vest money we've spent going back that far, because we're under a 5-year Massachusetts grant, so it's good for that 5-year period. So I've sent the paperwork in. They don't expect to put out payments again until September, because they have it that comes in parts. They expend it in parts, first come, first serve. They say that because the qualification is as long as you get the federal money, then Massachusetts will match it. So that basically means our vests are going to start coming in for free. But we're not going to see our first payment for the vests that we've already bought, which is like 7 or 8 vests. That's $3,000+. We may not see that until September, but they say that the money might come in April. So we don't know which one it's going to be, but we sent the paperwork in, we've registered for it. So at the same time, we have, because vests are good for 5 years, and we keep track of that, my vest expires in November. 2 of the officers on duty, their vests expire now, so we have to buy them new vests. And we have our 2 part-time, so that's either 4 or 5 vests we purchase, knowing we're going to see 50% of the money from the federal government, believing we're going to see the rest of it from the state. But if we have to spend it in this fiscal year, it may not come in until July, and it may not come in until September. So we have to buy that. We don't have the money for that, and we're going to overextend our supply budget, but all that money's coming back and it'll be free. So unless the state frees up their funds in April, then we'll break even, because we'll be getting as much back from the state as we're spending on the new vests.
How much are we having to spend up front
So
for this
that's
period of time? This overrun amount, actually, not the
It's
total amount.
900 a vest times 4.
Okay.
So so we've had to make that order. We're obligated to put the 2 guys that have the expired vests in this, and we're obligated to put the 2 part-timers in. There's no getting around it. I'm just saying that the federal government moves a little bit slower than the state government does. And I've seen the money come back in a couple of months, and I've seen it come back in twice that time. You really can't judge when it's coming back, but it is going to come back.
Usually within a year of
Oh,
submitting your application.
It's what happens is every year you submit another grant request. So we have 2 grant requests right now in their funding. So the town of Barry has all the money already pre-allocated for this and another 7 or 8 vests. And then in another few months we'll put in another one, because we're going to run out of the one we put in 2 years ago. So the money's there. It's allocated for us. We've sent in all of the forms. It's just getting through the paperwork on their end.
I got you. I just want to make sure that again, we've got to be careful about overrunning a line item that may have been on the warrant that the town approved. We can't just do that, so we need to make sure we have things in place that cover it before we overrun it.
Right. So, so I tell you that we had no choice but to buy them. We didn't anticipate having to buy so many vests. We anticipated having to buy the 2. But 3 people leave, and there's 3 vests we didn't see coming. So, at any rate, we don't know whether the money's just going to come right back before July 1st and everything will be fine, or if we're going to have to look through other accounts.
And that's why I'm just saying, if it comes down to it, you may have to go before the finance committee and get approval to use some of that money. And if it comes back within this fiscal year, maybe the point is it goes back into the account you take it from, not necessarily back into your account.
All right, so then my next move is going to be to go to them, because I have to make these orders pretty soon, just because guys have to have them.
Understood. But that's what
Yeah.
my understanding is, that's the procedure we have to follow, so let's just do that, and that way the finance committee plays their role.
I would suggest the agreement we have for the new hires, that if they leave soon, that they repay their training, that we include their vest cost in that, because that's not recoverable.
So by federal grant, we keep vests.
Does us no good if we can't use it for somebody
No,
else.
we keep vests that are close to, what you say is a good point, because we keep vests that are close to expiration, but we have to let the new vest go with, like a new vest, we have to let it go with the guy. So I'll bet you under our current agreement, we could still enforce that, because.
We should, because that's something we can recover, and in the future.
Does it cover
it's-
the uniform costs? The initial
This is
startup
all
uniform
costs
costs?
of training, so maybe it's something we need to add, but I.
We're gonna have to look at our investments in
Okay.
total in that agreement, but in the future, I know it's only, you're 2 years in here.
Right.
These are kind of things you have to try to start anticipating, like we've already discussed vehicles and getting in the budget, and
So-
try to look at all the things that might come up like this.
Right, that's
Unforeseen,
fine.
they
Right.
need to be foreseen.
Right, thus far, we've lost only 1 vest that way,
Okay.
because guys that have left with vests that had like 8 months left. in
But
them.
as far as the renewal of the vest,
I
this shouldn't
gotcha.
come as a surprise for our budget now. This is something that, because you're new enough here that maybe you didn't have the whole records on them, we need to
No,
start
no, I
knowing when
get it.
those things are coming pre-planned for
We have-
purchases, even if it's a capital purchase, if we have enough. We need to
We did
not
budget.
be hit with these
We have
mid-budget year.
we have a tracking sheet. We knew that we were gonna have to replace the vest, we just didn't expect to have to buy the additional vests. So we were budgeted for the replacement, but we weren't.
So
budgeted.
the good adjustment to make would definitely be
The
in the
miss
personal.
was the personnel
agreement.
turnover has
Yeah.
caused
In the
some of these
agreement for
changes that
the
are
term-
unpredictable.
The agreement can carry that from now on if we modify that, so if they do leave early, we'll get that money back, and we wouldn't get hit this way again. There's a way to adjust for it, as I'm saying, so we don't
Right.
get it again.
Right.
We're really trying to avoid budget overruns. We talked about that strongly in
Absolutely.
this budget year,
Well-
because last year was horrendous for it.
When I go before the finance committee and talk about the budget, we talk about potential academy costs, and we talk about the uniform costs, and they always say, we're not gonna budget you for what might happen, come back to us when it does happen. So, to your point, that'll be.
So now it's just time to go back to them and
Right, and,
the account you set up can be used
Right,
for
it would
that
have to be-
purpose.
right. they
at
can-
any time in the year with their approval.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so,
Thank
so
you.
that's the best, but again, the good news is we found a funding source for the other 50% of the.
That's
best, so
fantastic.
ultimately it should be free for us.
Exactly. We're just trying to figure out how to float it until
Float
it
it till
comes
then,
back.
right.
Yeah. Portable radios. So I guess I'll discuss that a little bit when we get to the communications and dispatch, but I would just say that they're falling apart. We have submitted a warrant request to Andrew for a replacement of our handguns. So that's an $18,000 item to be used to replace the handguns, the clips, the holsters that go with them, and the light attachment that goes on the gun. It's actually a pretty good price for replacing all of our weapons. We currently have a 6-hour 40 caliber. Industry expectation under police use is 12 years. They're 14 years old. So and
Just gonna ask how old they are, because they
14
should
years
last a
old.
while.
So we're past that. The weapon we're looking to get is a 6-hour 45. And again, I think we shopped around and we got the best price, and so.
Why do you want to go to a 45 away from the 40? That was the big move a few years ago, to go to 9s and then back up to 40s
So,
from a 9, but.
You know, they went away from the 9 to the 40 because they're looking for stopping power and they don't want to over-penetrate. The 9 would over-penetrate.
The 40 was a little bigger and it didn't penetrate us.
Right. And what I'm seeing, especially with what we face here, I mean, we don't go on many bank robbery calls, but we go on a lot of wild animal, a lot of bear calls. And we're caught away from our car, and we have a 45, and we can't get
Stopping
back to the
power you
shotgun.
prefer.
We've looked at the statistics for stopping power of 45 against wildlife, especially a bear, and there are more success stories with a 45 and fewer success stories with a 40. So that's as far as the clip capacity, we lose a couple of bullets, but we're adding
Quite
a
a
clip
few,
to the belt.
quite a few, don't you?
So we carry 2 clips right now, so we'll be carrying 3 to make it an even exchange.
Is the 45 a staggered clip or is it a straight clip?
Straight clips.
So you go 8 rounds, 7 rounds?
Yep.
And the 40's got to have 12 or 14, doesn't it?
11.
That's all?
Yep.
That's still significant, but.
Yeah, so we're looking, we're trying to match the weapon.
I hope
use
no
that we're
officer
gonna-
in this town has to use more than 8 shots in any one engagement.
Right.
If that
You would
happens,
hope, but if
it's
you
gonna
had
be
a-
a whole news story.
I would imagine if you had a bear charging at you, your accuracy would go down quite a bit, and you may be expending them quickly.
Oh,
Right.
It doesn't take long,
Understood.
it
I
doesn't
just
take long
meant,
to
I
squeeze
hope.
that trigger 8 times without thinking about it's a problem, if that was the case.
That's my
You
Bobcat.
you could expend 8 rounds very quickly and find you're clicking on an empty chamber and need to reload. It's hard to stay calm if there's a piece of wildlife that could kill you is coming at you. But 3 rounds, it's not that big a difference,
Okay.
but the size of the round is, so.
Right.
And do you trade the old ones in when
Yes,
we,
so they give us a cost for each gun.
what do they give us in trade-in, any idea?
$265 per gun.
That's it?
That's it.
Oof.
More to come on that. We'll talk more about that. But
Yeah, we could, I bet we could sell those and get better money. But,
With a municipal bid.
well, literally you can, but we'll talk about that.
Then
What
we'll
we
deal
know
with a
is
whole
we're gonna get a
different.
We're gonna get a minimum of $265 per gun.
Yeah, there's potential to talk to a gun dealer and see if you can get a better price for them, they're gonna be legitimate and be able to sell them, possibly get more.
Reading our minds.
I would think we do much better than that.
Okay.
I'd buy them all at that price, you kidding me?
Reading our minds. So that's where we're at right now. So we put the warrant in with that as the price that they gave us is roughly $18,000, so we put in $18,000. Training. Our SRO is in driver training right now. I've mentioned to you that more individually that AAA has agreed to train him to be a driver's ed teacher. Now, why is that important? It started as the idea that when our kids and the kids at Quabbin go to get their licenses, they go to a private school and they have a class on OUI, impaired driving, and all of the traffic laws, but they're getting it from a civilian. So we wanted to be able to offer it from the SRO, something that they could talk to him, they'd know him, and he could talk to them with a whole lot more, basically, knowledge. But in order to do that, and for them to get credit for it, he's got to be certified in AAA graciously, because I've never heard of this been done. They told me it's never been done in Massachusetts, and they don't know where it's been done, but they said that they would train him, and it costs $1,000 for the course. We have the $2,000 per year with the school that they pay for $2,000 for the training. So they've already paid the $1,000 for the school, and then we'll be working on the overtime cost because he's got to go to an awful lot of classes in Worcester. 3 weeks worth of the total classes, a week of class, a week of teaching the class, and a week of teaching kids to drive. And then we don't know where the school's going to go with this, but it started with kids have to take the class in order to get a parking permit on campus, which I thought was great. Now they're talking about trying to actually bring the driver's ed program back to the school, which I think is even better.
Yeah.
So
That's going to create questions of where the budget money goes, because driver's ed is expensive. I'm sure they're not going to do it for free for kids when they're paying $700 for driver's ed course.
If the
Be
school
interested to see what they do
can
for
use it as a revenue source to help offset some of their costs, and I'm all supportive of them looking at that as an option.
I'm thinking.
I mean, if you're paying a private company to train your kid,
Right, but if they're going to pay and have the school resource officer, they should be paying the officer for that, at least putting something back towards the officer's salary.
And I think
well,
when
he
we
just
get to that
mentioned
point-
they're already giving some funds towards us
When we get to
in
the
certain
part where
respects.
we're talking about him teaching after school and stuff, I'm sure that it's gonna be a conversation that we'll all be having to make sure that, from my standpoint, being able to give these kids the opportunity to get a really good
And do it
class
here in town is
and
huge,
do it
instead of
here,
having to
yeah,
go.
I think
out of
is
town.
is a win. It's just
Yeah.
a win. The other SRO training issue is this summer, he comes up on his second round of, it's mandated that SROs continue to receive school safety training, so his second round of training is this August. It's called the Advanced SRO class. It's in Massachusetts, and again, it's going to be covered by the $2,000 because it'll be a new fiscal year that the school has put aside. Because our training budget is tight now, we're coming to the end of the year, we're only doing mandated classes, which is first responder defensive tactics, but we've done our training throughout the year where everybody's good. We've got a few online updates. We save a lot of money by doing our updates online, so we're good there. We've just reached that point of the year where we've been doing training, and now we're at the end of that budget.
What do you guys do for first responder training?
Well, it's an 8-hour day. We have the instructor we bring in from North Brookfield, and it's basic EMR, EMT, a little step below.
What I was going to say is you should consider talking to Chief Rogowski and doing combined training with the fire department, because they self-train. They have qualified personnel, which will get instructor costs down in
I'm
town.
happy
So
to do that. I'll look into that.
see, talk to them about it, because we have to keep up with that all the time. So
Uh-huh.
that's something they do on a regular basis, either different instructors, and
Might work out well that way.
Yep.
budget money's budget money.
Actually, they just
Works
trained
in-
me for CPR just a few weeks ago.
Well, it works into training nights for the fire
So,
department, so.
I now have my CPR card. They emailed me, and technically
Where I come
certified.
from, we train with the fire department.
Yeah,
Came
it's,
from-
we used to do with the ambulance sometimes, now they're part of it, so it's even easier, but,
By the way, that was a free training provided by the fire department from the
Heart safe.
Heart Safe Community program that the
and
Lions
Masons.
Club
The Masons.
worked very well, and the Masons?
And the Masons.
And the Masons also worked very hard to get us into,
There
and
should be a couple more courses coming up.
so I appreciate it very much. And like I said, I did take advantage of it. I know a couple other citizens were at the training I went to, and they're hoping for
as
a
you know,
greater return the next
first
time they
responder's a little more
advertise,
involved
so
than just the CPR, but
it was very good.
it's,
So anybody interested, it was worth the 3 hours. It wasn't much, but they get into it and you walk away learning something. It's not something like you just, oh, I saw a commercial, now I know the same thing I already knew. You get trained. I had to put the plug in. It's worth it.
Okay, we've had, in terms of, we're doing as a police department, we did have one major case. Unfortunately, I can't tell you about it. We've got an ongoing investigation that you'll eventually hear about. And then we had, just to point out, we had that car thief incident where they got a stolen car and all of that. That guy was sentenced. So that ended up the right way. And he's in a Massachusetts correctional facility, and Connecticut's got extradition dreams because he's got like 12 outstanding felony warrants in Connecticut for similar stuff, and as a result of our efforts and the efforts of Sergeant Matarojan, we uncovered information regarding 2 car thefts in Connecticut that they had outstanding. So, you know, it was a good investigation, and the officers did a great job. And it's also nice when you get the call from the court that it's been settled and he's been found guilty. It's good. The policeman's ball, plug for that. We have at this, you know, so it's March 8th. Just so you know, if you haven't read the flyers, it's a sit-down dinner. DJ, we'll have a photographer there. Happy hour, I think it starts at 5, goes to 11.
Okay.
Or 6 to 11, at any rate. And we're doing really well. The donation for the tickets, we have 100 tickets currently have been purchased, or donations have come in for 100 tickets. So there's still time, so we're looking forward to that. Dispatch issues, getting back to the radios. So there's a current budget proposal for dispatch, and I'm sure you'll have questions when you read it. But one of the big issues that we have is our portable radios. I believe the portable radios should be part of the dispatch budget. I think there should be a replacement schedule built in. We're supposed to have seen, I think we're seeing savings from Warren coming in as a department, and I've been asking for a replacement of 3 to 4 radios per year. We have 20 radios. We are sharing radios now because the expense is on us when they break to fix them, and that's not as easy as it sounds. I think we've got a dispatch. That's where the radios are controlled out of, and I think that if they applied $1,200 per radio for 3 to 4 radios per year to keep us in a cycle, it would be the right way to do it, versus leaving it to the town to all of a sudden have to replace their radios when in fact it's all tied into the budget that we already pay. So I just ask you to think about that as we go into their budget year.
I think the radios were part of the original agreement when they came in, but I don't know the agreement for the maintenance of them. But I think when the switch over was done to regional dispatch, the radios were part of that. So I don't know if that means they're going to own them.
I think we've got to look into it, because I had heard discrepancies between how we entered into Rutland Regional and how Warren has, specifically regarding that. Radios were not part of the agreement when we entered, but Warren came in and they offered new radios in order to bring Warren in.
I was pretty sure they were.
That's my understanding.
Pretty sure they were part of our agreement, because I know they went to, they came in waves, went to the police, and they went to the, supposed to go to fire, and I think somehow they got put in DPW trucks. Something screwed up like that with them, but
No.
with the vendor that did it, but.
Part of the 5-year plan that they presented to us the other day, they showed radio replacements for all the member communities, and it was just a matter of whether or not the towns were going to be on board with funding the capital expenditure, and hoping that with the savings from Hardwick that would be something they could add into the budget. So it sounds like something that they were already planning on doing.
Did they identify any details of that, similar to what he said? Is it like each town's going to get 20% of their radios replaced every year, and every 5 years we start over? Or did he even come close to what he was?
I can't think of it off the top of my head. I have it upstairs though.
All right.
Yeah.
Worthwhile conversation during the week.
Yeah.
As we talk about that, I think key to that is there's a replacement schedule, but they remain the property of the town, because the town is ultimately paying the budget, and you don't want to be tied into.
Still our money funding them to make the purchase for us.
If all of a sudden we have to switch dispatch locations, we would be trapped by the fact that we'd have no radios, and all of a sudden that have to be part of it. So I think they should remain the property of the town that's paying into the budget.
Could we get a list of the total number of radios between all departments? I'm guessing what's that? Fire, ambulance, police, and
we could
DPW.
age them. I think the fire got them last. Age them all. They got to be 4 or 5 years old now, right?
I don't know, they seem older than that to me, but we have 4 that are newer, and the rest seem to be older than that.
Okay.
We had to change. No, guys, I think we had a frequency change, so we had to get new radios.
I know there's some issues, but I couldn't recall how that all got figured out. I remember being at the training Bob had for radios, and he talked about so many channels from so many, it's like...
Oh, the radios themselves, there's so many options.
Well,
It's-
mostly due to the mutual aid, obviously, because you have different towns under different dispatch and different UHF versus...
Yeah, I want to say we're on a high frequency now instead of a low.
Right, we're on.
We're in UHF instead of VHF. We were the old fire standard, but...
My last item is police headquarters. Andrew and I have talked about this and about making sure that there's money at the end of the things that we still need. We need the cameras to be installed, which we own. I think we own all the cameras that we need. We need some type of a doorbell system. It's that simple, built into this, because people come to the door and they can't get our. I mean, they call dispatch, but we need more of a direct system, and then we still have the smart board that needs to be purchased and installed in the training room. So we've talked about that, about there being some existing money that might be available for that, but that's what we need to finish off the building.
Have you looked at all at a simple wireless doorbell, like from Options?
That's exactly what we.
They're like $30 or $50, and
It's something like that, but we just want to have it professionally installed. We want to make sure we're buying one that'll last more than just a little while, but when we.
well, they should all last, but the wireless one is pretty simple. It's
I
just a
think that's-
battery outside and the receiver inside.
I think that's what we're looking at, something simple, but we just need it, and when we figure by the end of this year, we should be in a position to put all that in, and then we'll finally have everything we need there. You know, we're still not using the cell the way we should use it, because we don't have the intercom and the camera.
Okay.
So we're getting there.
Nothing I can do.
And that is.
I used to do that.
Are we going to Stetson
Full-time.
Security Protocol next, or?
We may as well.
Yes.
That's what's right here.
Okay. I have our protocol, but I'm not sure exactly what you were looking for on that.
Let's start with yours, and then we'll figure out if there is one for Stetson.
Right, so basically, we handle Stetson as a 2-officer call. That's our first security protocol, merely because the presence of any stimuli can result in like a domino effect. And we've seen that, whether it's an ambulance call or whether it's a broken light or who knows what. So we send 2 officers in, just because things can get out of hand and there can be issues, like because there's always a crowd there. We'll go to a fight, you know, there's definitely the chance of an excited group. So we send 2 officers, that's our first protocol. And then really after that, it's a matter of what we do with their elopements. And what we do is we send out 2 types of alerts. Dispatch is asked to send out a reverse 911 as soon as we have an officer responding to an elopement. And we then will post on Facebook for those people that we're trying to reach everybody, so we realize some people might get it through Facebook if they don't get it through reverse 911. And that's with the basic information that we have. You know, if we have descriptions, obviously, time, if we have pertinent, like a direction, and we'll put it in, you know, with, and please call us. Then when command staff is notified immediately in any case that Stetson elopement, and that's because we want to be involved, because they're all different, but it's one of those things we want to know about and we want to get the jump on. So that happens right away, and if there's an exposure concern, some reason why we think that they might, that they're really exposed to danger because of, say, the temperature or something like that, we ask for an ambulance to be put on standby, going back to the other night in the snow. And so that's part of our protocol. And then when it's over with, we get a reverse 911 out to let people know that the situation has resolved itself. We'll also put a notice out on Facebook, which we'll leave up for a few hours.
Okay.
How was the timing for the triple elopement they had, for them notifying you versus these kids being gone? And how long do you think the kids were gone before they realized the kids were gone?
In this case, they told us it was 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and I think we had 2 elopements in 2 nights, and I think that was pretty accurate. So I think they got to us within half an hour or so of the whole thing happening. We didn't get any information that leads us to believe it was anything longer than that.
So 20 minutes from when the kids were gone, or 20 minutes from they noticed?
All told, they noticed they were gone, they started looking, and 30 minutes from the time that they found out they were gone to the time that they called us.
You happy with that time?
Happier.
Seems
I'm happier.
seems they still do quite a bit in the time they're gone.
If it were up to me, they would call us as soon as they noticed something.
And that's what I'm looking for. I think it would be smarter to get you guys involved sooner, so they don't have time to say, we'll steal a car, or break into someone's house or shed, or be the next town away. Certainly in that 20 or 30 minutes they spend looking before they call you, it makes me wonder how often do they find kids in that 20 to 30 minutes, and maybe this is a question you could ask them. How often do they find kids in that first 20 minutes where they're looking versus?
Well, I have asked them, and they say most of the time. You know, that most of the time it's over with very quickly, and they don't want to bother us with it or something like that.
But what's very quickly? I mean,
They find it just a little ways down the road. You know, it's still almost in eyesight. This is what they tell us.
Yeah, I'm concerned that maybe these kids are out way more than we know, and they're finding them on campus most of the time.
And more than they know, you know, more than even they know. So, I mean, I agree with you. I wish that we would be notified, like that would be the first step. But
I don't understand the resistance to maybe trying, of course, it's not the staff there, it's trying to set up some sort of better surveillance system for themselves to
yeah, I think the
try to
staff-
keep an eye on them. I
the
realize
staff
they're not
works really
locked
well
down,
with us,
but if they could have a way to know these kids have, you know, gotten out of a door, if they had an alarm on a door, so an alarm went off, and that somebody at least knew to look that a door opened, something as simple as that. I mean, I don't know how else we can reach out to them again and ask, but it would seem to me that if I had a kid getting out of my own house on a regular basis, I'd do something to put an alarm on my door so I'd have an audible notification when the door's opened, in a way to keep track of my own kids.
When's Joe due back? Later this month?
In 2 weeks or so.
Okay. And nothing against Peter, who we were referred to when Joe was out. But understanding Peter's not going to be able to do much more than accept a message and then have to wait
Pass it
to
along.
internally discuss. So it's not much worth doing until Joe comes back to see if there's any steps we could take on that. I'm going to put it out there. There's a certain balance between call the police every time versus just being an increased burden for the police to show up if they truly are finding people and bringing them back and no issue in town occurs. Then why are you calling the police if they could be doing something else? There's a balance there, is all I'm saying. So just because they're not calling doesn't necessarily mean they're making the wrong decision. Some of the fines could just be, oh, we found him in the bathroom in the other building. It doesn't necessarily mean they even left property. There's a balance. And so I don't assume that every time they can't find somebody, the first thing they should do is call the police. I do believe and 20 minutes is not a lot to ask about. Do your first check first and then call. So if the truth is 20 minutes, but here's the thing that gets me, and it's still never been well answered from Stetson. We found out someone's been missing 20 minutes ago. That's not saying the last time we saw the person on site was 20 minutes ago. It means the last time we checked to see if everybody was here was 20 minutes ago. But we haven't seen that particular student for 2 hours. Who knows? I know that's not their procedure. Their procedure apparently is every 15 minutes they do bed checks, per the paper. Their paper, their procedure, their written procedure. So that would be something we want to make sure they're clarifying in their communication. We last saw the student when, not when did we identify they weren't here. Because it covers up a big gap of time depending on how they want to answer that question. If you're not specific to when was the last time you saw the student and can confirm they were on your campus. If that's not 20 minutes, then you're starting to get into bigger questions still that we need to work with Joe on to figure out why that's still happening.
But based on that, if they realize this kid's been missing and we haven't seen him for 2 hours, that's a good time to say we should call the police first.
Yeah.
And possibly.
But right,
Chief-
we won't
Chief
have
could-
that data to stand on unless we can
Right.
start pushing for when did you last see the child?
And you possibly get a phone call,
For you.
maybe like an alert, not like, we need you here, someone's been missing, but letting you know we're beginning a search on campus for somebody. We'll call you again if we don't find them in 20 minutes. And then at least the officers know to keep their eye open in case they see someone walking around. Not necessarily go look for it, but keep your eyes open.
Well,
We're doing a campus search now.
we don't know if that may happen 12 times a day that they have to, but going back to what we were talking about, to be a little more specific, I think that I would prefer to be notified once they realize that they're off campus. You know, not, so once they realize that they've left, that they're gone, doesn't necessarily mean that it's anything more than they're gonna walk down and walk the kid back. I just think it helps us to get the ball rolling, to know, we've searched, we've looked, we now are certain that they're off campus. That's when we'd like to, and then of course they.
And I agree with that part.
Then they might
Once
come
you know
back
they're
and
not
say-
on property, now's the time to pick up the phone.
Right.
I'm just wondering if they can be honest about, we haven't seen them in 2 hours, they should maybe make that call quicker. That's all I'm thinking there.
Time will tell on that one. So I don't want to make a prediction based on past behavior, because it does sound like they want to make things better in certain aspects. And I'll leave it at that.
There are certain steps they could definitely make, and I don't know why. I'm gonna have to talk to them.
I think we both
personally
agree there
sometime.
are some steps they can take, but it's steps they have to choose to take, because we have no power currently in our position to make them do anything.
And I understand it's not a lockdown.
But the one thing I would like to know is, have we had any progress? If I recall, Joe Allred had mentioned that he was gonna work towards giving you some type of acuity rating so that when they
Yes, that's what I
identify
was gonna
someone's
ask.
out. Have we made progress on that?
No, it's tied up in their legal channels. So
Okay.
I'm supposed to be meeting this week with a gentleman from Stetson to discuss what we're saying. Well, okay, great, give us what you can give us. You know, we're not gonna go into all diagnoses.
What we asked for isn't HIPAA protected, it's just generic
So-
type
Well,
of.
I think it's just not protected any more than any other youth-related offense issues that the police deal with.
So-
They still have to control the information presented in youth
Right.
crimes.
So-
Like, you can't just publicly say this.
There are limitations, but we're asking for an email to us so that we don't have to respond there to pick up the information. And it could be description, it could be the most basic stuff.
Yeah.
If we can't get that they're a criminal danger, if we, you know, if we
Low,
can't
medium,
get-
high risk is not a hard thing to say.
If we just like to have something, so what happens is that delays us because we have to send 2 officers over to Stetson to pick up the sheet that they used to give us, you know, we'd ask them for a face sheet. It's just a picture of the kid, then basically name and date of birth, nothing really more than that. We like that emailed to us, so as soon as they call us, they email to us. Now we have that, and we can start our search rather than we send 2 officers to Stetson and we call other agencies to start the search for us, and we know we'll get the information to you when we
And you
get it.
pick up some kid walking home from a high school track.
Yeah,
I mean-
and it just delays us, and what I'm gonna talk to them about is, can we get, you know, not fax to the station, but email, because any one of our officers can pick it up on a department email, look at it and go, okay, there's a picture of the kid, if they have one, this is the description of the clothing, and whatever little information they can give us, that would at least get us a head start, you know. And if we look at this strictly from the standpoint of the safety of the child or the young adult, it's still very important for us to have that, you know, in a snowstorm or, you know, it's 2 in the morning or anything.
Agreed. This is information that between the police department, who understands what type of information can and can't be made public, and Stetson, who understands what information can be made public or not. I mean, you both deal in understanding what you can and can't tell the world.
Right.
There's no reason you couldn't both sit at the same table and say, we know our business, so share the information. We won't share it with the world outside of legal boundary. I mean,
And
we know that if you gave it to us, we are held under the same restrictions as you are. You cannot then, just because you got it, go give it, you're not
It's
WikiLeaks
not a.
or
press
whatever.
release, right, it's not a press release, but and I think they're trying to, get that logjam moved because they, like I said, they have legal hurdles, but in the meantime, we're asking them to pare it down and then expand it as their legal team tells them they can.
Okay. So we gotta make progress on that, but we just gotta keep working with it. I'm going to, if you guys are okay with it, when Joe gets back, try to give him a call. I did have a call with him a month and a half ago, just to catch up on stuff. I think it was a month and a half ago, beginning of January, I think was about the times. At that time, it sounded like the tension between the town and Stetson was kind of peaking, and that call made me feel like they understood that we could maybe still meet at the table. It hadn't completely broken and destroyed the bridge. I'd like to reach out and make sure we still maintain some type of bridge, otherwise we're going in the wrong direction. We're not going to have a lot of legal backing. And yes, Sam, we have talked to lawyers about this, and we have very little power. But anyway, Stanley had requested the floor earlier, so I would like to get to him first.
Call
Yes,
volume
just
numbers per town
recently
per
there were
resident. Did you get to that? Or?
4 days in a row, kids
That-
that had escaped from Stetson.
We had two and we're still working.
We had,
Actually, I had them in front of my house.
We are working.
And
Yeah, they
counselors,
won't bring it up if we don't have the numbers yet.
do it 4 days in a row. And a lot of
Did not
times,
go
the
under.
counselors or whatever are right behind
It's a
them,
valid
standing in
thing.
the middle
It's
of
a
the
valid,
road, almost getting hit by cars.
assignment.
And then I ended up calling the police. So,
No, that's a
if
coercive
somebody
measure
on
that
the
would
street
make them-
doesn't call the police, a lot of times we don't see the police.
Yeah.
And the other
Cheaper to
thing
fix
is,
it than to
that
pay it.
the chief was mentioning about his budget with overtime and everything. How much of his budget is going towards Stetson Home, making these calls, 2 guys, the ambulance, all that, they're getting a service and we're paying the bill. And I'm also concerned about the safety, talking with some of the other neighbors. Having kids look in through your front window, and that's happened. You
Yes.
check the police log, and
yeah,
so that's happened more than once.
I've heard straight from people that have
And,
said that.
And the place has been broke into. And because they're minors, they can't be in the police log and all that.
I've heard of fire departments, when you have an alarm system and you get a false alarm, that's okay. You get 2 or 3 in a certain time frame, and you get assessed a fine for having the vehicles out there for it. I wonder if there's something to do with town, if we looked into, average calls per household in town, per residence, how many is a reasonable number of calls to have to someplace, and how many before a place is becoming a nuisance. And maybe we look into language in a bylaw proposal that sets up and establishes acceptable. I mean, you can't do it with ambulance bills on their own, it's got nothing to do with this, but repeated use of police and fire. Certainly, it's a limited asset to this town. And if we looked at the average number of visits for a police department per household, I bet it's less than 1. It's...
Except my house. I
It's...
seem to be calling 911 all the time now.
But it's
Quite a few, I
it's
think.
quantifiable, in other words, it's quantifiable to say an average per household, or where we do frequent houses, what's considered a often visited known
It's
household.
too subjective,
It's,
because every call needs to be determined whether it was a viable, responsible call, or is it due to the actual occupants of the house versus them being afraid of someone from another house.
and that can be.
So it
and that can
becomes
be-
too subjective to write into a
No,
bylaw
it's
that I
not
think has any strength.
If someone's calling because of issues within their home, going on in their home, versus I see someone breaking into a car across the street, that's not a call. If you're calling for service or a problem inside a home, which you would say a domestic issue, you can certainly quantify domestic issues.
But would you say that somebody should have to, say, just for example, you're a parent, you have an unruly child, 14 years old, we'll just say. And because of the laws in Massachusetts, that child starts getting violent with you, your only recourse is to call the police. Because if you get violent back, it's likely you will be a child abuser, depending on how the story's written in court. So I know parents now who the first thing they do when their child starts getting like that is call the police. Because of that same legal advice they had received. Right or wrong, they've received that legal advice. Now are they going to have to start paying the police every time they call after 3 times?
Yes.
No, they were legally advised to protect their legal right because of a situation in the
I
way
would
the
s-
state can.
I would say yes.
No.
And that's where I'm saying, no, it gets too subjective now. Each case is warranted separately. I would never
This is
suggest putting a bylaw in that says you charge someone because you called the police too often.
This is a business.
I've called
But you
more than
can't
one
write a
time.
bylaw separately in that regard. You can't divide up that group home versus,
That's a no, more than once.
or you're targeting specifics. I don't believe we could pass that.
It's not specifics, it's
But
just.
if you're interested, though, I don't want to say
We
don't
could-
pursue
we
it.
can-
I just wouldn't support it.
I'm interested and I'm gonna pursue it.
I just
I
don't
think it's-
think, despite all we're saying, he's still only putting so many cops on the road because we're only giving him so much of a budget. His overtime is based on loss of manpower more than an officer had to stay 2 extra hours at night because he's dealing with a call. That does happen. I know it affects your budget, but I don't think it's an all-encompassing overall burden on your budget. Am I wrong?
You're right.
So I know that comes up a lot. What it really is the officer available to do something else at that time? Because we're not giving them a 4th officer during that shift because we can't afford it as a town. So if 2 do go there and it happens to be a shift with 3 officers, we only got 1 left to deal with the rest of the town. I understand that. But that's not necessarily a cost thing that we're going to be able to calculate to say it's going to affect how he runs his department by money-wise. It affects how he runs his department based on where he wants his personnel because he would rather them patrolling the streets or responding to other issues, I would guess. I don't want to speak for you on that, but I think it's difficult when we start trying to say how much of a financial burden is Stetson on the town when the way we budget each of our public safety departments is based on personnel availability, not per call. So you can't really suggest their budget is going to change because what Stetson does or doesn't do. As a matter of fact, the ambulance budget might actually be able to go up because we charge for those calls and we actually get revenue from it. I'm just suggesting it potentially, if you do the math, could actually be a benefit that we have that because we get more ambulance calls to help justify the budget. Police and fire is different, but police and fire are pretty much manned for other reasons than Stetson. Just Stetson takes up their time more often than we would like.
I think you're more likely to get leverage with the SRO concept. If they fund part of a position, because the idea is you go there a lot.
Or fund training for a couple police, that means that they're willing to say that officer's been trained, we're willing to provide more information to that officer about our children. If they'll provide the training, then they should be able to pick up the phone and say, yes, this person is such and such a class, such and such a details. You do or do not want to approach this individual.
I'd rather hire an officer and put in there 40 hours a week, you know, and treat it that way. To me, that's, we're going to be there. You know, prevention is a big part of, you know, build a relationship, work with the kids, have a presence.
Do you know if they have their own security? Do they hire
Not the-
security?
I don't believe that they have anybody call security. I mean, they have a lot of staff that are tasked with behavioral
But you don't
issues,
see
but
the old
I do
security
not
badge
see
on an individual.
Nor security vehicles, and we don't speak with security personnel when we go there.
The only reason I ask is the library in Worcester hires security just because of the people that come to the library. The senior center thinks they need a security personnel because all you old folks are getting violent. I mean it. you're getting grumpy, and then you can't keep it to yourself. So anyway,
Who are you pointing at?
the old people in the back row. But anyway, I'm bringing it up because if places like that think they need security, I don't understand why Stetson doesn't also have their own form of security that can be their very first. Your job is to patrol your own campus perimeter. Nobody gets past security, and then faculty is doing their bed checks, and that would assist it if we can't convince them to help us fund your position. We'll fund your own position where you can pay the guy $15 an hour because that's what they like to pay security people.
It's like the schools that hire retired law enforcement to be their security. They can do
It fits into the retirement, so it's not more than what
more
they can
people,
earn or
right.
whatever.
Right.
But I'm open to all those discussions. I think we need to start those discussions again and see if we can move forward. I think it would be worth, whenever Joe gets back, we reach out and see if he would be willing to come and talk to us. He said he would be willing to. He said he's not worried about this type of meeting. So we can start that type of conversation and see what he's willing to look at and what he's willing to do and what he thinks he's able to do. You know, again, we've got to approach this with, let's find some common ground we can work together on. If we take it in a different direction, it just builds a bigger wall and we still make no traction. So I'm looking to see how we can move forward to help the town create a better, more safe community. Because right now we do believe that the presence of Stetson and the elopements of the students at such a consistent level is affecting the safety of the community. Am I wrong?
Well, I'd love to have the same 5 minutes to spend on this that you just did if I could, and explain my side of this. You explained very strongly your side, and I think as this board, we should all be heard, instead of cutting me off
No,
after
you
30
can't.
seconds. I think we
No,
should
you
spend-
had rules. You get
I
2
think we
minutes.
should- well,
I'm joking.
You had 5 minutes. I think it's reasonable that I spend some
You
time.
did not have to be like that, Greg. You could have just asked, could I please speak?
I tried, and I was cut off. It was very frustrating.
You
I'd
never
like to
asked for the
speak.
floor.
We were having a conversation. I made an input on it.
You have the floor, Greg. Not yet. I just gave the floor to Greg.
I'll listen to a question first. She's been waiting. I've seen her hand up.
My whole question is,
Claire.
what is Stetson doing for us? They're not paying taxes. What are they doing for the town?
I'll
Are they
tell you,
doing
this is what they'll
anything?
tell you. They're the second largest employer in town. Quabbin Regional being the biggest.
Yeah.
I mean,
Some of those
you
people
asked, what are they
aren't-
doing? I'm
some of
trying to
those
find,
people
there's your
aren't
answer that I
actually-
expect they would give.
But they're not, I'm a taxpayer. How many thousands of taxpayers have we got in this town? They're not getting anything from them, but yet we're paying for the services. I really think they should be billed for services. They're not, we pay our taxes so we get those services. They
You
don't.
cannot set up service fees that don't apply across the board. So if you demand that they pay a service fee, then every company would have to do the same thing that works in this town.
They pay taxes. Most of them pay
You
taxes.
can't create a
And
nonprofit
that's-
specialty service fee.
To
I
me,
don't
that's-
think,
I mean-
I don't think any other company in town would have a problem paying a service fee if they needed to call the police 3 more times, more than 3 times. I don't think so. And I think that, I know for a fact the fire departments do it in many places. When you have a fault, especially, I dealt in security systems for a lot of years. And if you have a false alarm in a smoke detector system, they come out. When they come out, it's typically going to be an engine and a ladder. They're going to send a fire company out to prepare. You don't know if you have a fire or don't. 99% of false alarms. You go out a second time, they're going to send you a bill. Maybe the first time they send you a bill, it might be $100 or $200. Second offense, third offense, you know, for the repeats, it goes up, and you make a scale for that. I think it's reasonable to look at what we consider normal police services to other places, and as it, you know, I think it is quantifiable. Chief could certainly tell us how many times he's been there if you look back in his logs, how many man hours have been spent there, and we can quantify that to what we paid to have that officer, those officers, and a portion of money towards that vehicle. We've talked about
Sam, you had a comment?
No, I think Greg brought it up pretty well, that maybe we need to ask the chief to make a monthly list and submit it to the selectmen of how much time, what kind of calls, and how much time, and memorialize that regarding the dollars. What extra does it cost us to have Seven Hills around us, and how it affects our taxes? Because I'm sure that it affects the taxes, and I'm sure that it affects hearing people here. It affects the people who live around the school.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people here that remember the Stetson School
Bigger.
children being entwined and involved in society in the town of Barry
See me read a paint
one
can.
time. And there was a different class of people. And now, after hearing this gentleman who's not here, and it was Armin Jansen, speak about him being a driver for some of the school children, the class of students there are significantly different, and we, being a town, are saddled by their involvement. And I think we need to do something about it, because it's one thing if this town was singing and dancing and our budget was low and our taxes were low and we had a lot of growth, but we're not doing that. And gradually I see taxes, as Armin Jansen mentioned and other people mentioned, they gradually ramp up. And this is not the way to build a town. It's a way to destroy a town. So we have to preempt what's happening there.
Local government does not build a town. The local government is not gonna build this town. It's not gonna fix your tax rate. It's gonna be you guys, the constituents. We're hamstrung by what you tell us to do or not to do. I mean, the reason we didn't pursue solar is for a year and a half we were fighting about R80 solar rights, because that's where town had viable solar options. So we couldn't act on that till we thought that the planning board was okay to move forward with other things. I mean, it comes down to what does the town want, and that's what we're trying to do. So you're not gonna really affect your tax rate until the townspeople say, how are we gonna bring in extra revenue? How are we gonna make it so that unused commercial or industrial properties are actually bringing in bigger things, creating bigger property and real estate tax value, so we get bigger revenues from what's already there? I mean, there's a variety of things, but I don't think what you're talking about is gonna put even the tiniest of a dent in our budget regarding Stetson. Even if they gave us the same thing that we get almost every year from Insight Meditation of about $30,000 a year, how does that affect an $11 million budget?
Well,
And I don't mean it I mean overall when it comes to every taxpayer.
it's a lot better to be receiving than to giving. And we seem to be giving a lot.
All I'm suggesting is of the 3,000 people, 30,000 means everybody gets $10 back. 3,000 homes, 5,000 people. Do you see that as significant in your life? And I'm not saying it's not significant, but in an entire year, you get $10 back.
Are you asking me a question?
Yeah.
Do I consider that to be significant? No, but I consider a regular, steady, expected ramping up of taxes to be detrimental to the growth of this town. And I know people who've come here and who bought homes, and they say that the property has been reassessed, increased regularly, yearly, or whatever the stages are, and the taxes have ramped up regularly. And this is what's causing so many houses it's one of the causes, a lot of the houses to be unsold and unoccupied and maybe foreclosed upon, and as well as everything else. But you speak, is $10 going to make a difference? No, $10 is going to not make a difference, but repeated $10 is going to make a significant difference, and people feel it. And I know people in town who work for the town who have to take 2 jobs just to survive in this town. And I think we're not paying attention to some things, and we're being affected by the Stetson School. Because, you know, I came home the other day and I heard the word, several children eloped, which is kind of an interesting word. When you think about them eloping, you think that they're hand in hand and they running to get married, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an interesting word that you guys use. But all these elopings cost us money, and I think that maybe I'd like the committee to have a motion to ask the chief to memorialize it on a list and quantify it and list the cost so that we know what it cost us every single month to maintain that property. And at least we'll have that information. Right now, we're just talking about it. We're just pontificating. And I think we can do better than that. Thanks.
I believe they're working on those numbers.
Thanks.
Do you believe that's something you can track?
If I start today.
Whether it's in the office time as well, writing up reports, everything involved, how much time?
If I start today, I can track it. The software that we have, going back to try to identify the locations where we've spent the most time, it doesn't work that way. It does it by roads. South Street's got the high school on it as well, so I can go back and tell you how many times we went to Stetson, and I can start tracking exactly what you're asking me to go back and look at the numbers. That would be like, you know, page at a time. It'd be
Probably a lot of
labor-intensive,
guesswork
but-
anyway.
But I can start the numbers now, and 6 months from now, you have 6 months worth of numbers, sure.
Curiosity, in the last 2 weeks, could you tell me how many times you've been called for Stetson?
No, I can't. I can tell you
Ballpark?
ballpark, ballpark, we've been there 5 or 6.
5, so we'll say 5. And they have about 100 students?
Between 80 and 100.
How many times have you gone to the high school, junior high school in the last 2 weeks for a call?
Well, we have someone there all.
Other than the resource officer to call
How
out
many
for
times have we received a call?
last
In the
last 2 weeks?
past 2 weeks, trying to think of all the calls that we've had, probably 4.
4? And there are 1,200 students?
Yep.
So it's 0.3 per 100 as opposed to 5, so it's about a, 15 higher time rate that we're going to Stetson. Just rough quickly for that couple-week period, and it's a significant change. We go there 15 times more often per populace than we do to the high school. That's my point of it.
It's a point well taken.
Is there any way we can take a motion so we can get going on this? Because I know without
If they have
motion,
1,200
you guys
kids,
go,
we need
don't move.
60 visits. Is it?
We're just finishing up the discussion so we can clarify the
Oh,
motions.
okay, good. Thanks.
Make a motion that we request the police chief to start tracking the time his department spends for Stetson-related activities.
I'd second that motion, including vehicles and personnel.
Regarding vehicles, could you clarify what you're asking?
If he sends 2 officers, it means 2 vehicles. If he says 1, it's 1 vehicle. So
Okay, I
get an
got you.
idea of allocated hours per vehicle and personnel. So I'd second the motion.
Okay.
I'm in favor.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, chief.
You're welcome.
We don't have anything more with chief right now, right?
Later on.
Well, we got new business. Do we need him there for that?
First one
Excuse
would
The
me.
addendum to the
You want
police
to do
chief?
that quick, because it's just that one issue that you had.
Is that all? Because then we can let him go, I mean, that's why I'm asking
Right,
if
because
it's worth
the
bringing up.
appointments are planning board and something else.
Let's do that, and then we
Like
can
this.
let you have the rest of your night. One page or somewhere here about that. Is this consistent with the union agreement? Or is this
Yeah.
step up? Same thing, just
Same
applied to
thing,
you?
And it was in the original contract, for just some reason it was missed in the second.
The Board of Selectmen have any questions regarding including into the contract the educational stipend, which is the same we provide for the officers that actually work for the chief?
Why is this addition being made? Obviously, it's a union agreement with the officers. Curious as to why we're modifying.
It was accidentally deleted from my last contract.
So it was in the contract,
It
they
was in
deleted
there,
it.
and it was just.
So
somehow-
that's why I was wondering, why do we
Yeah.
suddenly jump in?
The one we
Yeah.
signed somehow got
As-
deleted out of the paragraph
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
So everyone understands, we're not just deciding to start giving the chief an extra $2,000 a year. This was part of his original contract and was accidentally omitted from the further signing of his new contract. So it's amending the contract to what it was supposed to read.
Yep.
Which is the original contract.
Good clarification.
Thank you. I'll make a motion, we Well, we don't have to make a motion for that, do we? Sign this?
Yeah, it's a contractual thing.
I
so.
make a motion, we sign this contract addendum as we have it listed here.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye. Does it need more than me? Is that my name and title? Because there's 2 lines in the date.
Okay, yeah, so, yeah, your name and title. We'll do 2 copies of this now.
We're reading, it's important for everyone to know why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Probably helped me more than anything.
Well, the next thing I'll see on Facebook is 2,000 posts. Why is something giving the chief $2,000 more dollars? That's not. It's, I'll be there. This is like we had a warrant item at a town meeting, and we had to reopen, adjust it because we phrased something wrong in it, from how it was read to how it was signed.
Usually that's with bond stuff, and it's like somebody 3 months later catches it.
Yeah.
So grab a copy of it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate your patience in going through all of this with us. Okay. Update on New Braintree grade school closing. Just make sure I pull out the right documents here. So, I don't know how much all of you listening may be aware, but Quabbin School District School Committee started the process of removing New Braintree elementary age students out of the New Braintree Elementary School to Ocam Elementary School. That required a couple public hearings, then it required a school committee vote, and then that vote gets forwarded under a certain timeline to New Braintree, and at that point New Braintree has a certain timeline to schedule a special town meeting, of which only that article is on the warrant regarding closing of the New Braintree Elementary School. We received a letter from New Braintree to the superintendent of the Quabbin Regional School District. To summarize it, generally what, if I recall, the letter states that New Braintree believes that the regional school district and the school committee did not follow the school district agreement in the procedures and steps taken. Specifically, they did not provide results of their school committee vote within the 7 calendar days in which the agreement requires. So they contested the vote and sent the letter back to the school district identifying that they contested. And this, from my understanding and further discussions after receiving the letter with different members of New Braintree, that this may require at a minimum the school committee to have a new vote taken, then recorded and follow the procedure thereon, where they have 7 days to notify New Braintree of the vote, and then the timeline starts again, or depending on legal counsel, it may require them to go all the way back to the beginning of the public hearing process and start all over. I don't know where that's going, but I'm just saying this is generally what was brought up in this letter. I don't know if either of you guys have something more you'd like to add to this at the time.
Summarizes the letter very well.
So, in other words, no immediate action is going based on the efforts that have been made by the Quabbin Regional School District School Committee to close a New Braintree Elementary School immediately. They may have to repeat some, if not all, of the steps they've taken to date to start the process again. I'll just state that I'm not in favor with closing any elementary school because I believe it has a huge part of what the community is built on and who they are, and it affects the town's ability to quote-unquote recover the people they think they need in order to fill the elementary school. So I think it makes it harder for a town to rebound when you start closing down things like this, and eventually becomes bad for the region and the school district itself. But that's my personal opinion. I don't think the minor savings they're identifying, which is, let's see if I do the math right, less than 1%. $100,000 savings is what they projected at the meeting we went to on a $34 million budget by closing an elementary school. I did not see that as
It's less than 1/3 of 1%.
so there you go. So you're not talking about a significant benefit, it sounds like also there, where it's gonna have a huge difference in how school programs are really funded based on the $34 million they're spending. The $100,000 does not seem like it's significantly gonna go towards something that will help create a better student experience. That's from me. I don't run schools. I recognize I'm coming from a different perspective. So that's where I'm at. I don't know if the other select boards want to even discuss it further, but it's something we received, so action is going to have to be revisited at some level.
We heard our meeting, was it in December with them?
Yeah.
And we had all 5 town select boards there, and the overwhelming opinion of all 5 towns is nobody would want to see a school close. It's not our vote, it was New Braintree's vote, and as I understood, they were against it. Another effect of this is you may save $100,000 a year out of their budget, but should there be a need to reopen that school in the future, you cannot do it. You'd have to meet the current building codes, and the school will not make it on current building codes, so you'd have to build a new school. And then we'd be talking millions of dollars to do so. It's a lot cheaper to keep the school current as a school, keep it on the books for the $100,000, and keep it available as a school in the future. It's still a relatively new school, just the building codes have changed enough that there's no way you could just re-adopt it and make it a school building again once it's let go. It would have to meet all the current standards to be called a school. So building-wise, it's a lot cheaper to keep this on the books, even for 10 years at $1 million, and try to build a new school for, by then, $4 or $5 million probably. I mean,
Change
nonsense. Yep, change of use. Once it's not a school, to make it into a school, you're not going to make it. Not to mention, I'm sure the town does functions there. They used to have Little League there. I know they have basketball leagues there. There's a lot of use for that school as a town building, and I don't think the town itself would afford to keep it as a town building if they had to have it on their books. They'd probably sell it or lease it out, and then the town itself and the community, all the towns around that go to basketball games there and Little League games there, we'd all lose that. So there's a greater impact to the public than just the school itself, the education portion. It's a central part of any town, I think, an elementary school, and I wouldn't want to see it close.
Anyway, it's their call, as I understand it.
Who's call?
The town of New Braintree can override the school committee anyway, put a vote to keep it at school. So we just have to wait to see how it plays out.
As per our agreement, I believe any town that's going to have a school closed has to agree to let it be closed.
Yeah, they do.
So.
It is their call, and I hear you there, Charlie, but because of the regional relationship and the various inter-municipal
Oh, it
agreements
impacts
we
us.
have, it will have an effect on us in some manner.
Yep.
More specifically, if it happens where no official school business can happen in that school, and it stays within the MSBA definition of QRST, Quabbin Regional School District's campus, per se, all their sites they manage, and then the capital upgrades and the use of that building fall completely on New Braintree's town budget. And they're already talking that the place is close to needing a new roof. While it's under the school budget, they can work out the 20-80% MSBA funding and work through that. The minute they lose it as a school, it's completely New Braintree's burden, who is already sharing ambulance services with us, sharing police services with Hardwick, potentially, if not already, sharing a senior center with North Brookfield, or some similar services. So they're already having a hard time keeping their budget because they're sharing with all their neighbors with most of their stuff. You take this from them and you're going to create all of those regional agreements are going to even be more of a burden, and they're going to have a harder time meeting those as well. I just think it's for me, it's not something you do to a neighbor. That's the best answer I got. Anyway, there's that. Any further discussion on that? Okay. Next item is also something from New Braintree. I'll read the letter. It's a quick little letter, and it's a recommendation for some of the Quabbin Regional School District towns. Proposed Regional Select Board Alliance Committee. Dear respective Select Board members of Barry, Hardwick, Hubbardson, and Oakham, the New Braintree Select Board would like to know if you'd be interested in the formation of a committee that would consist of the 5 regional school district select boards. Following the recent activities around the QRSD School Committee and administration, it became clear that there is little communication between the school committee and the member select boards. The New Braintree Select Board considers all 5 member towns as stakeholders and should be kept apprised in those matters. In addition, the formation of the proposed committee would not solely focus on the QRSD School Committee. It would be an opportunity to open the lines of communication between the boards within the school district, which may lend itself to several positive possibilities, such as potential joint procurement, review existing, discuss potential inter-municipal agreements, sharing resources, ideas, problem solving, sharing ideas. Perhaps a town has crossed a problem and solved it, and they can now share how they did it with other towns, etc. Select Board wants to get an idea of the level of interest of this type of committee before going forward with the process to establish. In addition, please feel free to reach out with any questions, suggestions, concerns, etc. You may contact Chairman Randy Walker he provides a phone number and an email address, and Teresa Kofsky, Town Administrator for New Braintree and Hardwick, can be reached at a number and a New Braintree email address also. What are your thoughts, gentlemen, on this recommendation or suggestion or request for information?
I think it's a good idea. I think we all know we've been out of touch with the schools as far as, I mean, the school committee is a voted body, members by itself, and it would be nice to have the towns who fund it have some sort of collaborative to be on the same page, so to speak, especially when it comes to budgeting issues with the school. You know, each town individually may have an idea and a budget of what they think and what they want to ask for, but collectively, if the towns discussed it, we'd have a better chance. I mean, they're dealing with the school committee and their budget on their side and going after us one at a time. I think it would be smart for the 5 towns to get together and you know, look at the budget, look at procurements, and look at everything they're talking about. It's going to give us a better chance of having some sort of input into their budget.
Yeah, I think it's fine, especially with a new superintendent. That we move forward on something like this. We were doing it with the, and maybe Claire remembers it, with the joint finance committees and select boards were meeting periodically up at the school, and somehow that just kind of fell by the wayside. But maybe it's good to include finance committees and start the process over again.
Right.
Then I think, would you want me to reach out to him and just copy you guys in response to the letter saying we're interested?
Right,
Let's
and-
discuss further.
And perhaps Charlie's suggestion that we include finance, a member of finance in the same committee and make it a larger committee. Because that's our biggest impact for our budget is that school. And that's going to affect finance, it's going to affect the select boards on all 5 towns.
Okay. Any more discussion on this? Okay, let's move on to the new business items. I think we finally got through old business. All right. Well, this is what the rest of the world wants to hear all about. Or don't. First item, Castle Rock Agricultural Enterprises, Inc. Host community agreement proposal.
Long night for you all. Thank you for having me.
You got it. I'd just like to state, so people know where it's coming from, why is it on the agenda, etc. We're all in the discussions about bylaws. Host community agreement was something that was given to the Board of Selectmen via the state. It was the state's choice to put it under the authority of the Board of Selectmen. When Castle Rock approached us and the town administrator said they submitted a proposal and wanted to be on the agenda, I had asked for it to be on the agenda. I had also asked that we try to follow the host community agreement process that we had initially drafted in the marijuana general bylaw that we had on the floor at special town meeting this last year. That process included 2 public hearings, as well as including the planning board in the content of the host community agreement. What I would like to do is something very similar to that process, but what I'd rather suggest is the planning board would be invited to identify things that they would normally have put into their special permit granting authority, where there are certain subjective items that they wanted in their bylaw, so that that information could be presented to any particular developer at this stage of the process, rather than a developer having to spend money for state applications and provisional licenses before coming back to a town and having the town say, and now you have to do this, where it's not clear in the bylaw what rights and responsibilities you may have or what offsets you may have waived. I don't know how the other board members feel about that, so I'd like to hear from you before we get too far into this.
Obviously, it's our intent to move forward with the bylaws that we've outlined. And I think following those is a wise idea, although I think we'll modify them. I'm hoping to somewhat we'll have that discussion again about the participation of the planning board. But I agree, if the planning board can be involved in the discussion, I'd rather see them be involved and have input on the host agreement. Not necessarily giving them the vote is what I've discussed before, but having them involved in the host agreement and dropping their special permit aspect of theirs, because I really think that's setting 2 permits for them is unreasonable. So I would like to proceed the way you're suggesting, have the planning board come to a meeting on it, see what kind of input they'd like to have, and then you guys would know before you go to the state what's expected from the town, instead of, okay, we say, yes, you have a host, we agree to work with you, then you go to the state, then they say, okay, you're all set, here's what we want you to do, then you come back to the town, and the planning board says, wait a minute, let's not go too far until you do all these things. It streamlines it, which is what we talked about several months ago, streamlining our permits, streamlining application processes, making sure things are listed online so people understand what the process will be. And this is one of those processes we already started to outline, so people would have an idea what to expect, so I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be I think inviting the planning board in, having a discussion, making sure that we're all on the same page so that they don't spin their wheels here and then go to the state and get something coming back. I would think that would be the most expeditious for both us and you, I think.
And specifically, when we had, at the annual town meeting, we had presented a warrant article for basically a grandfather clause that covered the one facility that was already approved.
Yep.
That wouldn't date back to this, so that covered, it's one and done. It was only things that had already been agreed by that, so we do have to comply with the current rules, and we don't have any grandfathering ability, just before anybody ever gets to that point. That was done from anything prior to that date, which really just covered them, but we had to say anything prior to then. We were concerned about the agreement we already had getting shut down by the new bylaws, which is why that was put through that way. But I don't anticipate any problem with this.
Yes, Sam?
What kind of business is this Castle Rock in, and if they want to come there?
They'll present that in a moment. It's part of what this whole item is about, but I wanted to talk about more of our administrative side leading into it, because I know that the town is interested in these processes. It's part of what the two bylaws have been trying to get passed in town meeting. So I figured we'd start with that discussion, and then in a moment, we'll give them the floor to tell exactly what they're proposing to do in the town.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't want to speak for you at this point.
Matt was outlining our process that would be within our bylaw that we proposed.
Yeah. So, with that said, I would like to give you guys the floor.
Thank you for your time. I know it's a long night for you guys. My name is Tom
yet.
Egan. This is my attorney, Brian Falk, came to support me and answer any specific legal questions about our proposal. I live on Walnut Hill Road. My wife and I bought the Patisi property that was for sale for quite a while on Walnut Hill Road. We bought it 3 years ago. We have 2 young children, a 9-year-old boy and a 6-year-old daughter. And we came from Worcester, where I lived for 20 years. I'm an ER physician by training. That's how I ended up in Worcester. And I also worked in addiction medicine for the past 8 years as well. So I do have an understanding of the concerns of people that are opposed to marijuana. I understand where they're coming from. But what we're proposing is to take a small piece of our land, and our land is 134 acres. It's mostly heavily wooded. We want to clear a small parcel. The total area that we would clear and secure would be 5 to 8 acres, deep out in the woods, on which we would farm marijuana for wholesale to retailers. We are not at this point looking to be vertically integrated. We have absolutely no interest in being a retail presence in Barry. We want to grow marijuana for wholesale. Our vision, tell you guys and ladies in the room, why I think it's important that you guys understand who we are and why we're here in Barry. We did not come here to grow marijuana. I grew up in the city, and for my whole life wanted space. My 80-year-old mother, who comes to visit us, laughs and looks around and says, "This is what you wanted since you were 7 years old." And we looked at this property and we said, you know, we can find a way to bring it back to life and make it produce something, and not just live here while I go work in the ER, but to actually live on the land and bring it back and make it do something. And we looked at a lot of things. We looked briefly at solar and discounted it very quickly because, speaking only for us, on our land, we would have had to wreck the land to do solar. And the family that owned the land before us, it was in their family for well over 100 years. And I think part of the reason they chose to sell it to us is because they believed us when we told them that no, we're not going to clear this land and put mansions up on it. We want to live here. We value how we can raise our kids in this town. My kids go to Ruggles Lane. We're here. And I think that's one of the selling points for us to the town, to you gentlemen, to this. We're gonna do this right because we live here. And if we do it wrong, if we cause problems, you can find me. You can come up to my front door and knock on my door and say, what are you doing? So we went through a lot of things and we realized that we had the right soil in the right place to farm marijuana and make a go of it. And we feel that we can be not life-changing for the town, but a small benefit to the town. And if you choose to enter into negotiations with us, we'd love to have you come out and look around. And anybody can come out and look around, and you will understand once you're there that you won't see it, you won't smell it, you won't hear it. It's not going to negatively impact the community. And why do we choose to come to you now? I'm very aware of the struggles to get the bylaws passed. I'm aware of the subcommittee's activities. And I think that us coming now actually can be a compliment, not a hindrance, because we have absolutely pored over the proposed bylaws. And there's some small areas, like I'll give you one example. I think it's on the planning board side. Outdoor growing, which is what we want to do, is legal, but it also says right in there that all growing has to be done indoors. We'd need to change that, but I think, you know, we know what the substance of your bylaws are going to be, and we can work within those bylaws. You know, we started looking broadly, and we said, what is the town requiring? The town is requiring 20 acres. Can't be seen from the road, can't impact the neighbors. Well, we can do it that way. We are lucky that we have the land and that we have good soil that used to be a field deep out in the woods. And we can secure it. And I promise you that we will secure it because we live there. My wife and kids live on that land. I will secure the facility so that it will not be a risk not only to my family, but not to anyone else in Barry. And I think that by coming now, from the town side, maybe when the bylaws come up for a vote again, they really need to pass. Because if they don't pass, and I'm speaking for me, I'm not speaking for my attorney, I don't know if he agrees with me, but I've been in the back row for your meetings for months, and I've heard you gentlemen express worry about this. If these bylaws don't get passed, marijuana is still legal in Barry, and then we run the risk of being the Wild Wild West. If we work together while the bylaws are being tweaked, the subcommittee is giving their input, maybe when it comes to a vote, you can say, look, we have a good family here who we have a host community agreement we have signed or we can sign, and we can move forward. I've researched the whole industry for more than a year, and I think my attorney will back me up when I say this. There's a lot of big money coming into Massachusetts from out of state. Venture capital people who are coming in, and they don't care about Massachusetts. They don't care about Barry. I came here to live the rest of my life here. Over time, I've realized I would like to grow marijuana on some of my land. Frankly, so that I can spend more time with my family. I've been an ER doc for 17 years. I've seen a lot. I can grow marijuana, make a living for my family, and coach Pop Warner. I can't do full-time ER and coach a football team for my kid. And it may sound kind of goofy, but that's really important to me, and it plays a role in why I'm here. But my concern, if the bylaws don't pass, marijuana is still legal in Barry, and I worry about these outside interests coming in, and you end up with a situation like what happened in Charlton. I don't know if you're aware of that, but you know, and I think that if you decide to work with me in the coming months, I'm not here to sabotage the subcommittee's work or the relationships that you're trying to build with the planning board. I'm going to work with who you tell me to work with. You want me to talk to the planning board? I'll talk to the planning board whenever you want, on your terms and their terms. But if we do this together, I think that when the moratorium expires, Barry can say to the rest of the state, we're in charge here. And you would have CPC Barry. I don't know the Iandolis, never met them. Our business models are very different. They're not competitive. We're looking to do something very different. But I think the commonality is when more people want to do it, then what Barry shows to the outside world is, look at the first two entities that we licensed. They have solid connections to Barry. And I've only lived here a year, but I came here to live the rest of my life here. My kids love it here. My wife grew up in the country. For her, it's going home. And marijuana for us is a crop. It's a way to earn a living. It's a way to not develop the rest of our land. And our forest, it needs work. We had a forestry plan done a couple of years ago. There's things we can do to make our woods healthier. Our neighbors hunt on our land, and as far as I'm concerned, they always will. But there needs to be deer and turkey out there for them to shoot at. And, you know, I listened to tonight a lot of the budgetary stress that you guys talk about. I can't tell you exactly how much now, how much of a financial boon we will be to Barry, but we will absolutely, happily make the maximum contributions allowed by law. Months ago, I saw there were these articles in the news about marijuana entrepreneurs complaining that towns were extorting them for fire engines. Well, I talked to my wife and the one business partner that I have who is one of my best friends that I've known for 35 years, and we were all joking that we would say, what color fire engine do you want? You know, so, you know, I just wanted to take a few minutes to let you know who we are as people and why we want to do this, and give you my most heartfelt assurances that if you let us do this, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We live here, and we will be answerable, and we will do it right. And I will work to address anyone's concerns that I need to. And I appreciate the whole room listening.
Any questions right now?
What sort of processing, if any, do you plan to do with the marijuana? What form do you plan to sell it in?
Dry it and package it. No processing beyond that. We are not going to be in the business of extracting oils or
That's what I was asking about.
making edibles.
Okay.
Nope.
Obviously, when it's growing and it's for wholesale, the 3% maximum tax we are allowed, which as you have in the agreement, is really, it's nice for the town, but it's also very restrictive. We can't spend it however we want. It can only be spent on issues related to this, to marijuana. So, and we could have 100 facilities like this.
Not how the law writes, just how it's been interpreted by many, and mostly the marijuana developers are the ones trying to spread that rumor because they don't want you to be able to do more than the 3%. That's my perspective.
That's my only concern. If we had 100 grow facilities and we can't spend the money on anything, it doesn't do us any good. That's what I'm worried about. Is
I just wanted to chime in, if I may. I'm Brian Falk, representing Mr. Egan. In my other life, I actually do represent a lot of towns and cities as a municipal attorney, and every host agreement I've ever worked on, we've been very clear that the funds are spent in the town's discretion. There's not a limitation in the statute that the funds may only be spent on impacts. That's how the fee is intended, and that's how it's set in the statute. But there's actually not a direct requirement that the funds be spent only to mitigate the impacts of the property or the facility. You spend it how you choose.
I'd like to hear that. That's the one frustration with it. Yeah, it's
Hasn't had to go to court yet to get a true interpretation, so who knows where we're going to land on that.
I think you would agree. We actually tried to write it in that way to make it clear that.
Unfortunately, it's not necessarily what rewrites what the state will let us do and not do. And sooner or later, it's going to get challenged and tried, but that would be certainly more beneficial. There's only so much we could spend on related issues for marijuana. But hopefully it could be spent in other avenues. And obviously, I think the bylaws even as they're being written, we're allowing for outdoor grow, despite the statement of had to be indoors. We did see they covered outdoor grow facilities, limited numbers in town. Obviously, we don't want the whole town to be covered in solar, the whole town to be covered in marijuana. It's got to be in a conscientious manner. And I'm not opposed to this at this point at all.
Just to clarify, I don't know if you gentlemen have reviewed the proposed general bylaw. Okay, so
We
you're
have.
familiar with the fact that host community agreement's one step, but when you go full circle, you come back to us for the license.
We know.
Okay,
And-
good enough. Don't need to go any deeper because it's not a passed bylaw. I
You
just
know-
want you to know that is still the intent.
From our perspective, from a business perspective too, I mean, you know, because Brian and I, my wife, who is my biggest partner in every way, and the third person listed there, who I've known since college. One of our concerns was how you would perceive us coming now, when the bylaws haven't been passed yet and the subcommittee is working. But I would emphasize again that I probably know those proposed bylaws almost as well as you guys, because I've just read them and read them and read them. And, you know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the subcommittee's purpose is to tweak things, so not to really change the intent or the true content of the bylaws. So the bylaws, as you and the planning board propose them, you know, except with those little tweaks like outdoor grows can't really be indoors and a couple of other things, those are the laws that we expect to work under. And from our perspective, from a business perspective, if we come to you now and you choose to engage with us, and we can work out a host community agreement, that may be the difference between being operational sometime in 2020 versus being operational sometime in 2021 if we wait another 6 months. We're not trying to be disrespectful of the ongoing process. We just believe that we can work within it, and maybe in the end, when things come up for a vote again, that we can be an asset to getting things passed.
Frankly, my thought was it was a wise choice to come now, and I'm surprised we haven't been inundated with requests to preempt the bylaws, because things could seemingly get stickier when that occurs. So I think it's a smart business move to come now.
Thank you, sir.
I'm surprised we don't have more, and I'm surprised people aren't getting ready for retail applications, because there's every reason to believe that the state may kick back our moratorium. Being the second time with no effort to pass any laws by the town, they may not allow it. So I'm surprised we didn't have any applications come in for that, hoping that gets kicked, because there's nothing else to prevent that side of it, except for a host agreement.
Yeah.
But I don't find it offensive. I find it just wise.
That's what you're concerned about is sort of what some people would use the word strategizing. We're not doing that. We're transparent. I mean, we're not going to play games with anyone. We want you to understand why we're here, why we're here now.
Okay.
So, two things. One is this preliminary presentation. We need to kind of set up a schedule. We need to figure out the steps we would take to try to get to a point where we would vote on this. That includes working with the planning board, and it includes setting up 2 public hearings. I don't want to play the game with public hearings where we post them, but we do them within 1 week of each other. It'd be more like do a public hearing, and then at a minimum, you got 2 more weeks before the next. So each one can kind of follow its own 2-week notification process, rather than it seeming like we're just piggybacking it to expedite it. The intent was to make sure we don't go so fast that the town doesn't have a chance to hear about it and then have a chance to have a voice in the process. At least
Speaking to that.
as I was recommending, the reasons we put that in there was for that reason. So I wouldn't want to say, hey, Andrew, could you post that we're going to have one on the 22nd and one on the 24th? Because I'm not trying to just get 2 public hearings in to say I met the bylaw that we discussed.
I think perception-wise, that has a lot to do with what happened in Charlton. And there's sentiment in Charlton that things were done super quickly, kind of under the cover of night. And
They wanted to get the revenue.
yeah, again, for us, it's so important that we live here. My kids are happy here. I don't want anyone in this town to think that I've ever done anything underhanded.
Well, the first facility, of course, was new to everybody, and partial select board to begin with. I came in late, had to catch up on it, and I think it was a lot lengthier process than it would be this time because it was very unfamiliar to everybody. So I don't see it taking as long as theirs took, but certainly giving some time for the town to have input and understand what's going on. Don't want anyone in town to feel like we snuck it past them.
I totally agree.
But I don't think it's going to be as lengthy a process as it was last time.
So
Shoot
is
for a couple of weeks for the first.
March
meeting.
4th and March 18th the next board? I'm not missing a holiday that throws us off. It looks like March 4th and March 18th are the next 2 Board of Selectmen normal Monday night meetings.
I think the 18th is President's Day.
In March?
The 18th?
No, I'm sorry,
Yesterday was President's Day.
not Patriots Day.
Oh, Patriots Day is April.
April. Okay, yeah, never mind. I knew that one of those Mondays was
I
going to
hear
be
you.
that. so.
I think March is that weird little window where there are holidays, but you don't get the day off.
Yeah.
Like St. Patrick's
So yeah,
Day.
4th and 9th, or
Unless you live
18th.
in Suffolk County.
Oh, they get... what's that?
Evacuation Day.
What? Evacuation Day, Patriots Day.
All right.
If I could take just one more moment to acknowledge my neighbor in the back, Steve Clark, who came to support me and just say that we've started informally to talk to our neighbors in person. And we haven't talked to all of them yet, but Steve has known us for a year, and we've become pretty close. He's become a grandfather to my children, both my wife and I. Our dads passed away a long time ago. And to have the support of an older person who's spent his whole life in this town, and he's willing to come here and support me, it means a lot to us. And so far, the neighbors that we've talked to have, somebody sooner or later is going to say, I don't want you to do this, but so far, everybody's been supportive. So we're in the process. We know that as part of the whole licensing process, somewhere down the line, it's not yet, but there's a formal process of notifying abutters. But I want everyone in the room to know that we are starting to talk to our neighbors face to face and say, this is something we want to do, how do you feel about it? And so far, our neighbors have been supportive.
I think they'll be more supportive than just getting a random mailer that says, come to a hearing about marijuana next door. I think it's, once again, a wise way to proceed.
So I would like to ask, and I agree with what you're saying there. The 4th, the 18th, and then actually rolling into the first meeting of April. Because I don't think we can't really put the 4th on, because we don't have 14 days between now and then for public hearing notice. But the 4th would be a good idea, where maybe we can reach out to the planning board to see if the 4th or the 5th, which is really their meeting night, if I'm correct, Tuesday nights normally. One of those 2 days, they would like to meet with you, review, discuss your site, and if, based on how you can generically lay out your plan, understanding it's really early to say concrete definition, this is what everything is.
Right, there are, I mean, there are
Work
a
with
lot of
them,
things
get
I-
some input,
Yeah.
but I would also like that we can determine if it's gonna be on our meeting night or their meeting night, that we know, so the 2 different boards can plan to attend together if they would like to. We can go to their meeting if that's what they want, if Tuesday nights work for us, do they? Would March 5th or 4th work for either of you, or not work for either of you?
I'm fine, yeah.
Whatever works for either board.
Okay.
Either, don't worry.
So, Andrew, do you mind initiating communication with the planning board to see if March 4th or 5th, they would like to have a meeting with the Board of Selectmen specifically regarding this host community agreement request?
Do they have this yet?
No.
I can provide you guys with additional copies, bound copies if you need them, or if you just wanted to.
It
distribute
might be
them,
good to
that's
get
up
it to the board, the planning board prior, so they have a chance to look it over before.
You
Yeah.
had a clear digital copy.
Yeah, if there's that or anything electronic, you could email Andrew.
Well, we got these electronically, didn't we?
No,
I
actually,
unbound
I-
them and scanned them.
Right.
Oh.
So, if it's possible, if you could send him something, if you have it electronic.
Send it to you, sir?
Yep. So what I'm suggesting is the 4th or the 5th would be like a preliminary discussion with the planning board. It's gonna probably be their feeling of the first time they see it.
I think we could hold the public hearing on the 18th.
We could,
That's the first one, then we could have the second
but
one.
we've gotta determine what the purpose of the public hearing is in our mind. Is it to actually say, this is the agreement where we have in place and we wanna tell the town what the agreement is and get some feedback and then give us another public hearing to see if we revised our negotiated agreement because of input?
I would just say
Or is it,
public.
hey, what do you think? Give us some input, and then we schedule the second one when we say, here's the final agreement.
I'd like to say we're having a public hearing on March 18th to entertain a proposed marijuana outdoor grow facility and invite the public to come have input and participate in that discussion. And we could let people talk about what they think of it and hear their concerns before we move forward with getting further into the agreement. And then the next hearing, we could say, okay, we're going to bring the group, have a public hearing, bring the agreement out, and let people comment on the actual agreement.
Okay.
And possibly, I would say, sign it at a later date, obviously, than that, but maybe have, I don't know if we're going to 2 or 3 weeks after that, maybe push it into June.
Well,
Well,
if we do a public hearing on the 18th, and then if we think are in a position to do another one 2 weeks later, that'd be our first Board of Selectmen meeting in April.
that's
But
posted
that
at-
is
that's
putting a
posted at
lot
the same
without
time.
another meeting in between
No,
for us to meet, so
I'd
we can
rather-
actually discuss what the public
Yeah.
hearing.
I'd rather push it off, skip a meeting, and say June 17th for the second public meeting. That gives us a chance to discuss it at our meeting.
The second one would be April something.
I mean, April, yeah, I'm looking at you, I'm going down the calendar.
I noticed, I was like,
We're
yes.
skipping a couple.
So let's say
We're hiding behind
the
that.
first 15th, would be April 15th. Is that a holiday? Doesn't, maybe we have a tax
Patriots Day, actually.
move, so that's the one that's
The
gonna miss.
22nd is Patriots Day, right?
For some reason, we have a tax as a late
It's
in the
highlighted
state.
red on the
Yeah, it's
calendar, so it
red.
looks like a holiday.
For some
So I
reason, we
think
don't,
22nd is
That's the Monday
Patriots Day.
after
for some reason, our taxes aren't due in that day in Massachusetts.
So,
Do we just go off a week, push it out a week?
I'm trying to think it through just to if everything goes smoothly, there's not a lot of revisits and needs for new meetings because of thoughts and various things. It does look like either the middle of or the end of April would be the closest we could sit here and make a vote on a negotiated agreement.
Okay.
Which probably means it's more likely gonna be
Well, you could do
May
the
6th,
You could do the first.
the
week,
earliest. Because that gives us time to have a public hearing and then a meeting in between, and then a public hearing and maybe a meeting in between, even if we gotta schedule it for that last week in April when we don't normally have one.
but- Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that
that's-
way,
That's a reasonable.
between now to May 6th, again, we can also not be judged as trying to fast track it, like,
But if
it's
we did that-
February. If
we
May
did that-
6th, it happens, people should have time to get input.
If we did that by, the first week in May, we're still only about 2.5 months for the process, which is a heck of a lot quicker than we did last time. I think hopefully that's reasonable. I think it's a reasonable amount of time to get the public input.
I have no complaints, sir.
Now, you drafted the general bylaw with certain thoughts in your mind, with public hearings and all that. Is what we discussed kind of in line with what you were thinking? Or,
Yeah, I think that if you're gonna have 2 public hearings, you might as well not present the exact same thing at both of them, so.
so use one to gather
Yeah,
input.
I'm just thinking about, after the first one, getting that information together, processing it, who's gonna be doing the edits, review, and then, taking a vote saying this is the final, basically, this is the final one that we wanna put in front of
Right.
Board of the public hearing, so that way there's not additional amendments after the second public hearing, and then going, well, we've satisfied the 2 public
Right.
hearings, we're not gonna present it again, so.
So use the
gotcha.
second public hearing as more as a presentation of what the agreement.
This is the final
put it
agreement.
forward.
Right.
Yeah, all the more reason to have 1 or 2 meetings between to hash that out.
So I just, if it's okay, I just want to make sure I got my dates correct here. So we're looking at the 4th or 5th for a combined planning board, Board of Selectmen meeting discussion
Yes.
about our proposal. Public hearing on the 18th of March. And then the second one in April, what date
That's,
are we looking at?
we're talking end
It's
of April or
either
early
the
May.
22nd or 23rd, depending on if it's a holiday, would be our normal second Board of Selectmen meeting that month, right?
It was April 1st.
Oh, no, that's
first.
the 15th.
First, then
I forgot the
15th,
first
and
landed on a
15th, yeah,
Monday.
15th, we might not do, we might skip that one and go out the next week to the 22nd. And whether we do it.
And that would
Then
be us
we do it.
scheduling an extra meeting that month, which I'm not opposed to.
No, that would be skipping the 15th week and just going the next week after.
Oh, I see what you're saying, just
Skip the 15th. and do it
pushing
the
1 week
22nd,
out,
yeah.
okay.
We've got time. Because we still have another week in April, right? We still have the 29th. We have a lot of Mondays in April.
Let's just see, if we wanted to do that, then we'd have to make sure. Okay, so the 18th would be the first one, we would have a meeting the first to discuss fallout, per se, of the 18th public hearing, so we can then, at that point, see how close we think we are to scheduling the second public hearing for later that month, the 22nd, or knowing we got more work to do, so let's hold
Yeah,
it and maybe schedule it.
I tend to think we might want to go on. I mean, I don't see us sitting down in one meeting, because it's just part of one of our meetings. I can't see us sitting down on the first and getting this host agreement done for where we want it in one meeting to present. So we'll probably need the 1st and the 22nd, and then do the first meeting in May to present it to the town for the second public. I think we'll need 2
Yeah,
meetings.
okay.
2 meetings to talk
So-
about, because we're going to want to work on stuff, get a draft together, then tweak our draft, knowing how we always do things.
So March 4th and 5th would be our first joint meeting with the planning board. First public hearing is March 18th. Second public hearing, right now estimated for May 6th, based on the progress through April we make in finalizing the details of the host community agreement.
Okay.
And you may, of course, come into either of our meetings on April 1st and 22nd to listen to
Yeah,
our
as long as
discussion
we
and
think
be
there's
involved.
more, we'll keep letting you know. You're always welcome.
You can always come sit, but we'll be discussing them hopefully at both those meetings.
I'll plan on being there.
We'll
So
see
if you
what the
could
public
also
thinks.
draft out that potential schedule and include that in to the invite for the planning board to either attend ours or ask if they want us to attend theirs. Due to it Either way, I would recommend that we see if they don't mind using this room because it's a bigger room for the potential crowd that might come in than upstairs.
And it's,
Even if it's their meeting.
and it's on camera.
I don't mind sitting in the crowd and letting them run the meeting. I just,
Yep.
hopefully it is practice on a way that we can move forward and still work together on something like this. So we can make sure that the planning board and those in the town feel like they need to make sure there's certain teeth to the bylaws.
What also
We
gives
can
it-
just work together to make sure that we're not asking you to do unnecessary effort to meet those needs.
if they feel that their special permit request is adequately met during this process, maybe they'd be more, agreeable to removing it from their bylaw, if they feel they get the say they want in this process. So I think it's a good thing to come up anyways. I'm confident that with the meeting together, that their concerns can be addressed in this host agreement.
I believe so, but we'll see what they think, because it does come down to them judging
Right.
people, not necessarily boards. Do you have any other questions or any thoughts you would like to express before we end the agenda item for the evening?
Just one question, sort of a logistical or procedural question. Are there any other things that you can think of right now in terms of specific questions you'd like me to be prepared to answer, or specific additional information you want me to have by a specific time? I think I have a clear understanding of where we're going. Other than that, I would just like to reiterate my invitation to you, your designees, anyone you think appropriate to actually come out and look at the site and understand why we think it's a good spot to do it. And
Are you okay if Andrew shares your contact info with the planning board? So if they
Absolutely.
want to, they could
Sure.
contact you anytime
Absolutely.
between now and that meeting to
Yep.
do the same.
absolutely.
I think
And
most
that
of my
would be a good
concerns-
first step.
Most of my concerns always revolve around security, and I think the state also sets a pretty high standard on that, so I'm not worried about specific questions other than that. I mean, I know
Yeah,
the state's
it's not gonna
gonna,
be a chain link fence.
set up,
They had a picture.
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay, so
Those
yeah.
are, those are examples of, I mean.
Yeah, I'm not
we're looking
holding
at-
you, you're using this thing.
No, but
I
just
got you.
generally speaking, we're looking at like prison, military grade, no cut, no climb.
It's not gonna be a
When I
short
first
fence
moved
either
to
way,
town,
because
I
if you're
came
talking
for a
about deer,
special
you won't have a
permit.
crop.
for an Irish draft horse, which cost me $15,000.
Wow.
And someone asked in the committee, well, how do we should make a regulation and say they have to have a fence and have to do this. And someone else was wise enough to say, I think if he spent that kind of money on a horse, he's not gonna let it get loose.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the same sort of thing. I certainly,
That's a fabulous analogy. And
I
again,
wasn't gonna let it run loose.
yeah, I mean, it's a valuable crop.
So rather than
And
make
I
another
live there.
regulation and everything else, certain things, common sense does take over.
And if I could just add, Tom does live there. I actually went out to the site with Tom, so I want to get a sense of it myself. You get out there, even on the perimeter, the edge of where he's looking to grow, and I challenge you to see anything remotely approaching a neighbor in any direction that you look. I mean, this is so deep within his site. You drive past his property on the road, you're not even seeing the trees that are going to be near where the fence is going to be.
And
It's
this-
that deep in the woods.
And
Say
this is in
the
the
perfect
winter
time of the
where
season to
the
get that look,
overstory's
because you
down,
don't
there's
have the
no
underbrush
Brush is
growth.
going, yeah.
So you'll see that it's, all of that, all the twigs and little trees are just so thick between you and the 1,000 feet between the next whatever. So,
Well, the process is set. We'll see how it goes.
Thank you all very much.
much
you.
appreciated, and thank you for
Thank you,
coming
everyone
before the
in the
board
room,
with
for
the request.
Do you have any agricultural experience?
No, sir, but, I didn't have any experience when I went to medical school either.
I was just wondering,
I'm a quick learner.
I just didn't know if you were
But,
tomato farmer at one time, or?
no, but what we plan to do, and again, we're months and months and months away, you know. We're going to spend some time identifying botanists and professional growers who know how to do this, and we're gonna bring them in. But other than that level of staffing, that's another thing. we expect to hire, we expect to have employees, and we, you know, it's gonna evolve. We're not sure exactly how it's gonna go, but we expect to have employees, and we want those employees to be people who live in Barry. And we want them, we're not gonna pay them $15 an hour. We wanna hire people in Barry, and, you know, some of our goals revolve around how 3 years from now we wanna be perceived. We want, like, people, the people that work for us to say, wow, they're great people to work for, this is a great job to have. You know, they pay us a good wage, they try to give us benefits, and we can live on this. And, you know, one of the ways, and I say this to my wife all the time, if in a couple years, like, other people come and say to you guys, we want to grow outdoors in Barry, I will have succeeded if you say to that person, go see what Egan's doing. If you can do that, we'll talk to you. You know, we want to do it right, and we can't give everybody in town jobs, but we can give some people in town jobs. And sir, I've heard you say in multiple meetings talking about what are we going to do to build Barry up, you know, and it can't all be about raising taxes. I listen to what you say, I sit in the back, and my operation isn't going to single-handedly do that for Barry, but, you know, when other people come in, and I'm not talking about marijuana, other people come in to do other things, that's how it gets done. And I plan to live here the rest of my life, so I'm hoping I can contribute. And I've taken up a lot of your time, and it's been a long night, and I thank you all for listening.
I appreciate it, and it's a good start. So we should be seeing you in, did I lose myself? 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Very good.
4th or the 5th. We'll figure that out. Once Andrew gets confirmation, we'll make sure to reach out to you and bring us all under the same thing, and hopefully we'll have that answer before the end of the week, if not early next week.
And I will work on getting you an electronic copy of this. I will work really hard on it, but I have to say the next 3 days, I'm 12 hours in the ER.
I'll send this out as preliminary anyway, so we have the information.
I'll get you a
so.
clean copy.
All right, cool.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Have a good night, sir. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Have a good night, Tom.
How do you do? How do you do?
Very good.
All right, next item, Chapter 61A release map C lot 133 Williamsville Road.
Go past it.
Under 3 acres. For this section, if I'm correct.
Yeah, 2.6 something, I think.
0.66.
We have recommendations from the planning board and the conservation committee not to exercise the first right of refusal option. From what I understand is we have to just do that first before they can assign the back taxes, and the back taxes can be paid and then it can be released. If I've got the process right.
An estimate on the back taxes?
I don't, sorry.
I believe, what is it, 60% savings, and you gotta pay back 5 years, so
5 years, okay.
whatever 3 years the taxes would be, but I don't know what it is on open land offhand. But we wouldn't release it until the taxes are paid, and that won't be paid, won't be billed until we refuse the first right.
Has this already been split in separate parcels?
Let's see.
Says it's a portion of the above referenced
lot-
parcel.
Lot A would be a split from the original.
Thank you.
So we'd have to find out if this is one plot now. If they're gonna subdivide, I think they have to take the whole thing out of 61A, don't they?
The subdivision plan was back in 1999, so I would assume that that was probably, it's already probably in.
I don't wanna assume. You may have a subdivision plan in, but I don't know if you can take farmland out of protection piece by piece. I think whatever the parcel was, it has to come out of farm
Now,
protection.
you
then
can take it
split
out, but I think if the stuff remaining in has to be 5 acres, right?
Right.
You can take out 2 acres, like, if you want to give a lot to your kid, one of your
This-
children.
Oh, I thought it had to already be broken down. You could take out
No,
lots.
doesn't have to
Back
be.
taxes paid the entire piece.
The remaining
But
acreage
the
is,
remaining parcel has to be at least 5
it's
acres.
8.664.
What?
8.664 acres is the
Yeah.
remaining.
Split into 2 sections.
Right. So they're taking
Oh, yeah, I
2.66
see
out.
it. I see it now, yeah.
8.664 is remaining.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. So anyway, I'll make a motion, we waive the right of first refusal.
I'll second the motion. So if they took
Call for
the,
vote.
Aye.
right? So if they took the larger portion out and only left 2 point something acres, they'd have to pay the back tax of the whole thing.
Right.
And the portions they keep are wetland, at least on the state.
Who wrote that in there, the typo?
I did.
Should we at least initial that, or?
I'll initial that as a correction.
Yeah, just so before we sign it, it's acknowledged.
Well, that's
as-
not in our package, that's his paperwork.
Right, that's for us to
backed off.
sign, right. We voted it, right? We voted it. And this is the 16th, what's the date today?
19th.
19th? Wow, I'm really close. On the 19th. You and Charlie?
Next item, Greg's Restoration Car Show. Special event permit, correct? This is the 4th annual?
Yep.
It's four,
What's that?
3 or 4.
Starting
I
to
know I forgot to print
catch
off.
up on the numbers.
I know I forgot to print off the online stuff, but all the departments involved in this did appropriately sign off.
Excellent.
Yeah, she did it, she did the application and she did it online also. She did it both ways.
Yeah, all the departments signed off on it online. I just forgot to
Online, yeah.
print that sheet. They say we're still trying to figure out that part, the print off the comments.
All right.
We gotta stick one of these up in the town.
April 27th, and you said everybody, all the applicable departments have signed off?
Yes.
Yes.
You guys have any questions?
Nope.
Comments? Do I have a motion?
Well, I will make one comment.
Okay.
Normally, the Fire Department Association does cook food down there as a fundraiser for the association. Doesn't benefit me myself, but I usually go down and help cook for that, so just make an acknowledgement of that, that I do go down there for the association to help them raise money.
Gotcha. Alrighty. Making a motion to accept the special event permit request by Greg's Restoration's 4th car show and swap meet Saturday, April 27th, 2019 at Felton Field.
I will abstain to be extremely technical.
Are you making money on it? Directly?
No, but given...
Well, that's fine, I was just...
No, I will not make any money on it, but I will abstain.
And call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda. Done. All right.
Who seconded
Hmm?
it? Who seconded it?
I did. Wait.
You motioned?
Charlie made the
Charlie
second. Second. I made the motion. Charlie seconded. Charlie and I voted yes, and Greg abstained.
Oh.
So, Joel Cranston has submitted an application to be appointed to the Cemetery Commission to replace, I forget her name. Why am I?
No, you're thinking the 9/11, you're thinking Colleen.
No,
Had somebody.
I can picture her, that's the problem.
On the cemetery?
Yeah, only because I recall her coming to some meetings, whether it was finance or DPW. She came to a
I have
meeting
it on the tip.
almost a year ago when she said, take my people and just let Parks manage them. And then we moved the budget accordingly at the same time.
It's before me.
But anyway, so
Have
I
it
can
to my
picture
top.
her, and I feel terrible that I cannot properly reference, because I'm terrible with names. So,
Oh, I know you.
anyway, anybody have any comments, discussions, want to make a motion regarding Joel Cranston's application?
I'll make a motion, we appoint Joel to the Cemetery Board Commission.
We know, is this these normally elected positions, is this open, or is it
I think cemetery is appointed.
strictly appointed? Okay. I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye. Joel, you have been appointed. Thank you for applying. Have you had a chance to review the Wachusett Greenways support letter? Apparently the Wachusett Greenways is sending a letter, or has drafted a letter for us to send to Congressman Jim McGovern.
It's actually a few different representatives. I just included the one to Jim McGovern. It's the same wording. They asked for one to Amanda Lewis at DCR, Senator Goby, Representative Berthume, and Congressman McGovern. I'm going to redraft the one for Representative Berthume because I forgot to write the word representative before Donald Berthume. So.
Well, I know that we recently were able to fit into the budget the $1,000 donation to the Wachusett Greenways that helps them pay for porta potties during the season. But by doing that, it also means that they were able to work towards putting up their $33,000 portion of matching funds to get actually a much higher, significantly higher grant. So the grant would be approximately $126,000 in the request, with matching Wachusett Greenways funds of $33,500 for a total of about $160,000. And it looks like, if I'm reading this right, this will help. Does this help connect Sterling to West Boylston by cutting through Holden?
I don't know, it says Holding to Princeton, so yeah, that's probably connecting Sterling in. If it's Princeton, it's close to Sterling.
Okay.
But it's 1.9 new miles.
So by doing that, right now, the trail technically ends in Barry, this portion of the trail they're referring to. And this bridge will continue to help anyone from Holden, West Boylston, etc., that likes to walk or bike paths, things like that, actually come to Barry through different means and methods, but it does add to that. So
these rail trails actually get a lot of use. I don't know if you go out on weekends by any towns that have them where they cross public roads, and they're actually very busy. A lot of people do use them and utilize them. So, of course, we support them. We have supported them, and I think we should sign this letter and show the support.
any thoughts or comments, Charlie?
Hmm?
Any thoughts or comments on it?
Yeah, it looks fine to me.
Okay. I make a motion that we agree to this. Is there do they want us to send a letter to how many people?
Just 4. I had them all written
All
down
4?
right here. Yeah.
Okay.
They get 3 of them. The 4th one, I
So,
just realized I addressed wrong, so.
Ranges from local to state to federal, or just state and federal?
Yeah, state and federal.
Okay.
Yeah, they just said to send it to your representatives, so. I mean, they listed like 10 different ones, but I'm sure that the Worcester representative doesn't, won't care too much about getting 5 different letters.
Harriet
Towns they
Chandler
don't
might not
represent,
care if
so.
Barry is supporting that or not.
Yeah.
All right,
So yeah.
I'd say second the motion to.
Approve, sign, and send the letters to the 4 representatives Andrew referenced. So call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. This is Jim McGovern's one. Oh, you got the ones with the actual colored?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good enough.
Yeah, just I forgot to write Representative Donald Berthium, just as Donald Berthium, so. A little bit more official.
He's close though. He's
Yeah.
open with that. He's a little less formal. You can call me Donnie if you want,
Yeah. I'll just strike it.
unless it's in front of the governor.
Just scribble it out and write.
Yeah.
Or we can just stop in and sign that.
Yeah, no problem. I'll do it
We're
tomorrow.
gonna show proper respect. Okay. Done. Now, with all of that said, correspondence. I really have nothing specific to speak of right now. We received some things, but none of them were really. These things you're looking at are not correspondence. These are personnel reviews that I am working with the town administrator to gather from various department heads regarding town administrators' job performance.
I think there's
And
two
then
or
when
three
we
of them.
gather them all, we'll set up a
Yes,
meeting
he's
with the
got
rest
the
of the
other
board, and when you can
Mhm.
review any comments people have gotten, and then we can sit with Andrew and talk about any of that may have come up. For all of you in the public, that will be completely executive session. You'll probably never hear a word about it because it is individual job performance stuff that normally does not go public. I don't mean that negatively, I just figured I'd put it out there. Speaking of which, do you have anything town administrator report-wise bringing up that wasn't really captured in the agenda?
Not too much. I just have provided you guys this letter of thanks I wanted to send to Insight Meditation for their annual pilot payment. So I don't know if you wanted to sign that. Other than that, it's been plugging away at.
What's this,
That was from the
Orders.
town of Hubbardston. They
Anything we have to
sent
do
us,
with that?
basically, they just affirmed where their
They just-
property bounds are.
so nothing we need to do with it?
No, just notification only.
And I assume we're not getting into this topic again.
Usually Rutland that wants.
Correct, I would take that into
Do that.
consideration when
Why
we take
they
the
want
next
to do that.
action.
Yeah, if, really, I just want to provide that for your
Not
information.
belittling it either, it's
She
fine.
did stop in today to provide that letter, but said that she didn't want to be on the agenda for tonight because she'd rather talk to her neighbors and have her neighbors come. So if you guys want to not talk about it at the next meeting, but at a future meeting, let me know and I can get back to her, just to let her know that we've taken it under consideration, but.
We had a,
I do think I'd
Good
rather wait
discussion.
till we've actually confirmed with Joe Allred that
Okay.
he's back and we can start the conversation with him and then hopefully
Yeah.
be able to create a better dialogue after that.
Okay, no problem.
Because I do hope we can create dialogue on this and promote some positive
I'd like to
action.
make a motion that we approve the signing and sending of the thank you letter for,
Insight
Insight.
meditation.
as presented.
I second that motion. Any discussion?
Nope. Should we read it?
Yes. Would you like to?
Sure. Dear neighbors, on our behalf of the town of Barry, please accept this letter for thanks for your joint voluntary contribution of $29,000 as payment in lieu of taxes for fiscal year 19. In these difficult times when town departments struggle to make ends meet, your generous donation is one more illustration of your organization's commitment to this community. Your actions exemplify a cooperative spirit that makes Barry a special place. Thank you again for your support, and please feel free to contact us if you need any assistance. Sincerely, and signed by the board members.
Well written. Thank you.
Do we vote on it yet?
Call for vote?
Aye.
All right.
I overdid.
That's a good point. I may not have done it on the record. I just. With that, for all others out there, I'll make a motion that we move into executive session for MGL Chapter 30A exemption, Section 21A Exemption 2. Discuss strategy with respect to the town administrator. We will then, after completion of that, leave executive session, re-enter executive session as per MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exemption 2, to discuss strategy with respect to the fire chief. Then we will leave the executive session, and at that point, we will adjourn the open session with no further action to occur this evening.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? Call for a vote.
O'Sullivan, yes?
Matt Urban, yes.
In favor?
All right, let's lock up the building. Don't let anybody out. Don't let anybody in. Much appreciated, and thank you for